everyone, welcome back to a new video. If you don't know me, my name is Rachel, and there are probably two things you should know about me before we go into this video. One is that I really love poetry, and two is that I really love to hate terrible books. I have reviewed quite a lot of them here on my channel, and today is no different. I would say that in my time on YouTube, I found that few people write worse books than everyone's favourite Colleen Hoover. So of course when I heard that she'd written a whole series of books based around slam poetry, let's just say I knew I had to review them. They had been on my list for a while. Today we are starting with the first one in that series, and it is called Slammed. Now, slight disclaimer before we start. I am a very big poetry fan myself. If you're interested, I have a whole playlist of poetry reviews, some poetry I hated, some poetry I loved. There's a whole page of poetry recommendations over on my website, so you can go and find some books and poets I like if you are wondering where to start. I'm also someone who attempts to write poetry myself, and I am someone who performs poetry quite regularly as well. If you want to check out my first little poetry pamphlet, you can do. It's called Reflections on Healing, and it is available on Amazon now. It's a collection of poetry and photography and all of that fun stuff. I've also got a few videos of some of my performances over on my website that you can check out if you want. I think the biggest performance to date that I've done was at Glastonbury back in 2022. And yeah, it was just one of the best moments of my life, without a doubt. But all that said, I've never personally done slam poetry. Slam poetry is a type of performance poetry, we'll get into it, but it's not what I do. Slam poetry by definition is a type of performance poetry which usually has some kind of competitive element to it. Sometimes there's audience participation, but not always, and generally there's quite a specific style of performance. It's as much about how you perform the poem as what the poem is itself. So there'll be elements where you may want to use sound or movement or emphasize certain words. Obviously kind of all poetry does that to some extent, but it's a bit more exaggerated with slam poetry, and there's a kind of very expected style, if that makes sense. It's not what I personally do, but it's still a very legitimate art form, and one which is obviously going to be mentioned a hell of a lot in this video. So we're going to jump into the book, but very quickly first I want to extend a huge thank you to the sponsor of this video, who I could not keep making long in-depth videos like this without, and that is the wonderful MyHeritage. MyHeritage are a leading global family history and DNA service, by which I mean you can take a little cheek swab, send it off for DNA testing, and then find out a load about yourself. You can build your own family tree on there, fill it with photos, you can even like recolorize old black and white photos and stuff like that, which is really cool. It checks your records against other people's, so you can match it with other people's family trees and find out stuff you didn't know. And then with your DNA matches, you can find out a little bit about your background, your history, your ethnicity, and it will match you with other people on there who've also done DNA testing, so you could potentially find new relatives. It's very exciting. Just last month they sent me this little beauty, which is their DNA testing kit, so we're going to cut back to past me now doing the test, and I'm going to talk you through it. Apologies, this was the day I had the microphone malfunction, so please bear that in mind, but I'll be back with proper audio in a second, don't worry. Today we are going to be doing the initial taking the DNA swab so I can get my DNA tested and find out a little bit about my makeup, my family history, all this really cool stuff. So I need to activate my kit online. Do not skip this step. It is necessary to get your results. Perfect. Let's do that now. Boom, activated. That click 30 seconds. Brilliant. And this is the main test kit. So we've got swabs in here. We've got our little vials of stuff that I think we need to put the swabs in. That's great. Okay, so I remove one cheek swab from its wrapper and use the swab to scrape the head inside of one of your cheeks, rotating the swab for 30 to 60 seconds. Then I open one of the vials, insert the swab inside, swab end down. Once the swab touches the bottom of the vial, break the swab against the inside of the vial, leaving the swab end inside the liquid in the vial. Much easier than a COVID swab. Far less invasive. Okay. And now we just do exactly the same, but with the other cheek. Seal that up, and I'll get that sent off this afternoon. So that was last month. So MyHeritage promised that they are going to give me an ethnicity estimate. They're going to break down where my family comes from over 2,114 regions. So it can be quite specific. This is going to be very exciting. It's also going to show me any DNA matches I have on there. But it's also totally safe too, because MyHeritage will never sell or license your genetic data. So don't worry about that. Your privacy is something they take really seriously. Start with the overview. So, ooh, okay. This is kind of not what I was expecting. 67% English, 33% Scandinavian. That Scandinavian I was not expecting. I genuinely just thought I might be like full English and it would be kind of boring. And I mean, okay, I know it's only 2 ethnicities. That's not a lot compared to some people, but I'm quite interested in this. Okay, so according to this, I have quite a few DNA matches. Nearly 16,000. One is close family, some extended family, and then 15,000 distant relatives. But 15 extended family is quite exciting. Let's have a look at this ethnicity estimate, shall we? Alright, here we go. So we have our 67% English, 33% Scandinavian. So we're talking Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Oh, I like this. Look, it tells me a little bit about it. Oh, okay, this does make sense. Okay, yeah. So Scandinavia is a region of Northern Europe that includes Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Scandinavian people share a common North Germanic heritage. In the Middle Ages, Vikings, North seafarers who raided and traded from Scandinavia across large swathes of Europe, left their genetic mark throughout the continent. Ah. So when my brother said we had some Viking in us, this is what he meant. I didn't quite realise it was this much. That's like 33% Viking. That's quite a bit of Viking, you know? No, to be fair, it could have been from any period of time. But I am going to say Vikings are probably most likely because Yorkshire, we obviously have York, which is a big Viking city. It's where a lot of them settled in the UK, which is pretty damn cool. This is great. Oh, I love that they give you a little history like this as well. This is wonderful. Shall we try and have a look at what my DNA matches are? And I'm not going to show you any personal information on them, but we'll see. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's sweet. Okay, he won't mind me showing that. First one that comes up is my brother. We have 36.2% shared DNA. Oh, bless. We are 100% siblings. Yeah, like you couldn't tell that by just looking at us or just being around us for like 2 seconds. So if you would like to discover a little bit more about yourself and hopefully have a slightly more varied family history than mine, but one that you find equally as exciting, then you can try out My Heritage for yourself. I have a link on screen right now, and there is also a coupon code that will get you free shipping when you buy a DNA test. Plus, as an added little bonus, you can also get a 30-day free trial to My Heritage's best subscription for family history research, which gives you all the really, really cool features on here, and you can do all sorts of exciting stuff. You can do your recoloring photos, you can build your family tree. It's really, really fun. And if you decide you want to continue with that, you can get a 50% discount on that too. Amazing. They're offering a lot. Go check out their website properly for all the terms and all that interesting stuff. Thank you so much to My Heritage for making it possible, for sponsoring this video and making my work possible. And thank you to you guys for listening. So, should we get on reading some Colleen Hoover now? Yeah? I'll try it. So like most Colleen Hoover books, or at least all the ones that I've read and reviewed myself, and most of the ones in the videos I've edited for Elise, Slammed also opens with death. So that's fun. Colleen Hoover really likes to give people a tragic backstory by just killing off someone close to them, or if they can't do that, just killing someone in front of them, you know? Funsies. Our main character, Laken, her dad has just died. So like I say, Elise pointed out in I think her last video on Heartbones that Colleen Hoover never bothers to actually write a likeable character. Instead, she just gives them a sad backstory and then expects us to root for them out of just pure pity right off the bat before they've actually done anything to like endear us to them or whatever. Like, it's just, yeah, that's what Colleen does here. It's been 6 months since he passed, long enough that my 9-year-old brother Kel doesn't cry every time we talk about him, but recent enough that we're being forced to accept the financial aftermath that comes with a newly single-parented household. A household that couldn't afford to remain in Texas in the only home I've ever known. We're then told that our main character Laken is called Laken because the parents couldn't decide between calling her Layla and Kennedy, so they thought, why not both? Major Renesmee vibes, right? And not in a good way. Laken reminisces for a while about how her dad was like the perfect dad and meh. And, you know, he would always tidy up her messes, like when she cut her own hair when she was 5 years old, and he looked after her and gave her a hair clip and stuff. It's, yeah, okay. I look more like my mother than I did him. Mum and I are both of average height. After having 2 kids, she can't really fit into my jeans, but we're pretty good at sharing everything else. We both have that brown hair that, depending on the weather, is either straight or wavy. Her eyes are a deeper emerald than mine, although it could just be the paleness of her skin makes them more prominent. I favour my dad in all the ways that count. Well, screw you, Mum, I guess. We had the same dry sense of humour, the same personality, the same love of music, the same laugh. But no, I kind of get it. Like, you know, she's a daddy's girl and now he's gone. She's like, oh, here's the best thing that ever happened. Parents fall into two categories with Colleen Hoover, especially like in their teen books. They're absolutely terrible and the child hates everything they do, in which case they may or may not die, or they're absolutely wonderful and the child loves everything they do, in which case they will die. So example would be like over in Heartbones, the mum is a drug addict and a terrible person, so she died. The dad is actually quite a good dad, but the main character hates him and thinks he's a bad dad, so he lives. The love interest dad was like this absolutely perfect, wonderful fisherman guy, so he died. In this, the dad was absolutely perfect, so he died. The mum, well, I said we'll end up seeing what she thinks of her mum, and then the more and more the book went on, and the more I was like, oh yeah, the mum's perfect, the more I was like, the mum's gonna die. We'll see. No spoilers. Kel is a different story. He took after our dad in the physical aspect with his dirty blonde hair and soft features. He's on the small side for 9 years old, but his personality makes up for what he lacks physically. I kind of hate the name Kel. It made me like giggle to myself every time I read it in this book. Even as an English person, all I could think of was Keenan and Kel. Why does Colleen Hoover have the worst character names ever? I still think the worst one is where she tried to name the guy Leeds because she thought that was a sexy name. I live in Leeds. It's not sexy. Kel has this gimmick which makes him quirky and fun, supposedly. I'm one paragraph in and I already found this annoying. Basically, he does everything backwards. He walks backwards, he talks backwards, and I was like, okay, this is definitely going to be a plot point. No. It comes up once more. That's it. For no reason. At least, it's not too annoying though, because it's not happening too often, but still. Kel walks backward into the kitchen just as I'm drying my hands on my jeans. Oh, no, use a towel. I don't like wet hands. He's a strange kid, but I couldn't love him more. He has a game he likes to play which he calls Backwards Day, where he spends most of the time walking everywhere backwards, talking backwards, and even requests dessert first. I wonder why. I guess with such a big age difference and no other siblings, he has to find a way to entertain himself somehow. Hurry to say his mum, Lakin, he says backwards. I hate this. I just noticed the age gap. It's, what, 9 years? Which I guess, yeah. I guess that's quite big for some people. I got a big age gap with my siblings, so I don't really notice it. My brother's 10.5 years older than me, and my sister's 14 years older than me, so I'm used to being that, like, younger kid, you know? Lakin picks up this hair clip she finds in the kitchen as they're, like, packing up to move, and it's one that her dad gave her in that story where she cut her own hair and stuff like that. And he told her it was magic as a kid, and she's like, ooh. And I wrote in my script, I'm gonna guess this comes up a lot later in the book, like something she holds or wears to remember him. God forbid it ever go missing. It's been under the fridge for like 10 years, but if she loses it now, oof. And I was like, let's take bets what happens to this hair clip. 1, it goes missing, but the love interest finds it or replaces it, so she loves him. 2, it gets broken in a fight with the love interest, and that causes the main conflict in the book. 3, it becomes the subject of a poem and then forgotten about. Or 4, it'll become something she wears at all her poetry performances until 1 or 2 happen. I was wrong. It's just not important at all. She spends all this time in the first chapter building up this purple hair clip, only to do nothing with it. I thought Colleen Hoover was going to fall back into cliches, but it turns out she just fell back into poor writing, where she sets something up and it doesn't pay off. In one paragraph, we managed to skip forward days of endless driving, and we end up in Michigan, which is another state in America. I know because I looked on a map. It's quite far away as well, actually. Our new landlord emailed us pictures of the house, so I immediately spot which one is ours. It's small. Really small. We had a ranch-style home in Texas on several acres of land. The minuscule amount of land surrounding the home is almost nothing but concrete and garden gnomes. The front door is propped open and I see an older man, who I assume is our new landlord, come outside and wave. I'm gonna be honest, knowing what Americans, and Colleen Hoover in particular, call small in terms of home and land, I'm still gonna guess this is a pretty giant house. You know? I'm English, I know what a small home is. I grew up in a little Victorian terrace that's just like, And I think that was still quite big by the standards of most cheap houses in the UK, and yet it's still tinier than most small American homes. So I'm sorry, I don't pity you. You went from like acres of land to a regular sized house and you're complaining it's too small. I have no pity. I'm sorry. It takes Laken a whole page to park the van she's driving. No jokes about women drivers, please. Kel, the brother, immediately runs out the van and just makes a friend on the street because apparently it's easy for people. I lean my head back and watch Kel and his new friend sword fighting with imaginary swords in the street. I'm jealous of him. Jealous of the fact he can accept the move so easily. And I'm stuck being the angry, bitter child. There's the angst we were missing. I was starting to worry this wasn't a real Colleen Hoover book for a second, but it's okay, it's okay. There it is. We get a whole bunch of exposition about why they had to move and a whole backstory. I understand why we had to move. Dad made a respectable living managing a paint store. Also, I'm sorry, but you're living on a giant ranch in Texas, while your dad runs a paint store and your mum's a nurse. Anyway, is property in America really that cheap? Okay, Mum worked PRN as a nurse when she needed to, but mostly tended to the house and to us. God, she wasn't even working for the company. Sorry. Anyway. About a month after he died, she was able to find a full-time job. I could see the stress of my father's death taking its toll on her, along with being the new head of household. One night over dinner, she explained to us that she wasn't left with enough income to continue paying all the bills and mortgage. She said there was a job that could pay her more, but we had to move. She was offered a job from her old high school friend Brenda. They grew up together in my mother's hometown of... I wouldn't even know how to start trying to pronounce that. This place. Right outside of Detroit. Ypsilanti? Am I butchering that? It paid more than anything she could find in Texas, so she had no choice but to accept. I don't blame her for the move. My grandparents are deceased, and she has no one to help her. I understand why we had to do it, but understanding a situation doesn't always make it easier. Colleen Hoover's really taking that tell, not show misunderstanding to the extreme here, isn't she? Laken starts playing zombies with her brother and his new friend until, oh my god, a boy appears. A boy. He looks a couple of years older than me and quite a bit taller. Hot would be how most girls would describe him, but I'm not most girls. She said it. She actually said it. She is not like the other girls. I know we joke about this a lot with Colleen Hoover, but come on. Now, this new guy is the little kid. It's his older brother. His name is Will, and he lives across the street. We already know he's going to be the love interest because this is Colleen Hoover, so of course it is. You can't introduce a man without him wanting to stick his penis in the main female character, can you? No. They're introduced. He smiles, our handshake lingers as neither one of us says anything. I hate awkward moments. Me too. And yet I still keep reading these books. Baffling. He asks her where she's from. Texas? I reply. I'm not sure why the tail end of my reply comes out like a question. I'm not sure why I'm even analysing why it came out like a question. I'm not sure why I'm analysing the reason why I'm analysing. I'm flustered. It must be the lack of sleep I've gotten over the past 3 days. Ugh, what a quirky girl. Always overthinking around a pretty boy. Ugh, she's not like the other girls, is she? Will takes his brother to school, and then Laken and her mum unload all the stuff in the van, and Laken assesses the house. There isn't much to this house. When you walk through the front door, there's a small entryway followed by the living room. The living room is separated from the kitchen by nothing more than a hallway to the left and a window to the right. The living room's beige carpet is edged by hardwood that leads throughout the rest of the house. Is that not just a regular house? That sounds like a normal, regular-sized house. English people, back me up, please. Come on. Her mum mocks her out talking to a boy, and then Laken brags about knowing what a basic word like inhabited means. Like, is this really all 18-year-olds have to learn in America, or is Colleen Hoover just so dumb that the basics seem complicated to her? Inhabited, I correct him. It means to occupy, dwell, reside, populate, squat, live. My SAT prep courses are paying off. Babe, you needed a course for that. Save your money. The next morning, it's really, really cold, and Laken's like, I need coffee, but the coffee maker machine pot thing, I don't know coffee, is outside in the car. So she borrows her little brother's Star Wars slippers and heads out to the car to find this coffee pot. And I was like, oh, let me guess, Will sees her in those embarrassing slippers and she just dies inside, boo-hoo. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Laken is surprised that snow is cold and ends up slipping on ice. Unsurprisingly, Will sees this across the street just as she slipped in her Star Wars slippers. How embarrassing. And she needs a bandage because she like scratched up her shoulder or something. So he takes her to his house across the street. He removes his jacket and wraps it around my shoulders, holding onto my arms as he walks me across the street. I feel a little pathetic with him assisting me. I can walk on my own. I don't object, though. I feel hypocritical to the entire feminist movement. I've regressed to the damsel in distress. Honestly, I'm shocked Colleen Hoover even knows what the feminist movement is. Wild! Laken starts to have a nosy around the house and look at all the family photos on the wall. And my best guess at this point was, the mother's dead, this is her stepmother in the photos, so Will and Laken are going to bond over dead parents, bet you. I was getting there. I walk over to inspect the pictures as Will looks through a bandage. They must have gotten their genes from their dad. In the most recent picture, which still looks a few years dated, his dad has his arm around the two boys and he's squeezing them together for an impromptu photo. His jet black hair is speckled with grey and a thick black moustache outlines his huge smile. His features are identical to Will's. They both have eyes that smile when they laugh, exposing perfect white teeth. Will's mother is breathtaking. She has long blonde hair and from the pictures at least looks tall. I can't pick out any facial features of hers that were passed on to her boys. Maybe Will has her personality. So you see why I was thinking she's dead, maybe that's not the birth mum. But no, it is the birth mum, don't worry. There's no evil step-parents in this book. Things start to get a little steamy as Will bandages her shoulder, if you know what I mean. And by that I mean he literally just puts a bandage on her shoulder. As he moves in closer to place the bandage on my shoulder, I can feel his breath on my neck. I've rubbed my arms to hide the chills that are creeping up them. He adheres it to my shoulder and pats it. Sexy, 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 sexy. I stand up and look over my shoulder, pretending to inspect the bandage as I plot my next move. I already thanked him. I could turn and walk out now, but that would seem rude after he just helped me. If I just stand here waiting on him to make more small talk, I might look stupid for not leaving. I don't understand why I'm even contemplating basic actions around him. He's just another inhabitant. I was like, please don't tell me that referencing inhabitants is going to become this ongoing joke or reference in the book, because I cannot. But don't worry, it's just another thing that Colleen Hoover sets up and then forgets about. He makes her coffee. He's leaning across the bar watching me as I drink the coffee. His eyes are the exact same hue of deep green as his mother's are from the picture. Okay, so at this point I was changing up my guess. She is the mum, but she's dead now, and that's why all the photos are years older, because they possibly haven't been able to take a family photo together since she died. Or, another guess, both parents are dead and Willie's looking after his kid brother alone. Either way, there's parental death. I'm a genius. I am a true genius. Either that or Colleen Hoover is just predictable. You know, either way. Will mocks her for the Darth Vader slippers as we knew he would, and then has to go to work. For Laken, just pages of absolutely nothing happen. She showers, she puts on makeup, and then she decides to drive to the shop to get food, by which time Will is back home from work. He's done a full day of work in the time it's taken her to shower. So she stops in the street to ask Will's little brother for directions, and he also makes a Darth Vader joke. Darth Vader? I realise the significance of his response. He's making a crack at those house shoes I had on this morning. Not a big deal. The big deal is that Will must have been talking about me to him. I can't help but try to imagine the conversation between them and what Will thinks about me. If he even thinks about me. For some reason, I've been thinking about him more than I'm comfortable with. I wonder how old he is, what his major is, if he's single. So my guess at this point was he's 19 or 20. He has no major because he's not in college, because he's had to get a full-time job and look after his little brother after his mum dies. Just a guess. Laken's about to use the GPS to find the shop, but the kid who, oh God, stupidly, is named Calder? I'm sorry if your name is Calder, but I refuse to believe this is a real name. Anyway, the kid is like, hey, don't use the GPS, there's construction, it won't help, blah, blah, blah. And then Will suddenly appears out of the house, is like, don't worry, I'll show you the way, and then just gets in her truck without waiting for permission, because that's what men do, apparently. So, Calder is your little brother's name, I ask, making a half-hearted attempt at small talk. One and only. Parents tried for years to have another baby after me. They eventually had Calder when names like Will weren't as cool anymore. I like your name, I say, and immediately regret it as soon as it comes out of my mouth. It sounds like a lame attempt at flirting. And I was like, in my script, I was a little snarky and I was like, is this really how kids flirt these days? But then I thought better and I was like, you know what, to be fair, yeah, that's kind of how I flirt. I like your name. Hey, it works, okay? Well, no, it didn't work on Kieran because I just completely did not hear his name for the first 20 minutes we were talking. It was very awkward. He kept saying his name and I was like, Kevin? And he said it again. I was like, Carl? It was not going in. It's become this ongoing joke between us where I don't know his name. But I knew it was a K, but I was not picking up on Kieran. yeah, I know how to flirt. He laughs. I like his laugh. I hate that I like his laugh. I said here, like, why? What's he done wrong? Nothing yet, so why hate it? Stop it, you're looking for conflict where there is none. I can't believe I still thought this guy was decent at this point. Just you wait. I feel a little gross now with all my stuff defending him in these early chapters. You'll see. It startles me when I feel him brush the hair off my shoulder and touch my neck. His fingers slip under the collar of my shirt and he pulls it slightly down over my shoulder. You're gonna need a new bandage on that soon. He pulls my shirt back up and gives it a pat. His fingers leave a streak of heat across my neck. Like, okay mate, I know you're checking on her wound where she fell, but one, let's not touch people without consent please and pull at their clothes. And two, seriously, how long did that shower take? She's clearly gone a whole day where she needs a new bandage. That's probably like, what, at least 6 hours, if not more? I feel like Colleen has a real problem in her books where the lives of her protagonists just seem to stop or freeze or nothing happens to them until they're back with their love interest again. It's like time warps when they're apart, and either, you know, like one day feels like an absolute eternity because they're apart and or if they're not apart and the action's not happening, the day just goes by in like a second, you know? 24 hours takes 30 seconds and it's just gone until they can be back together again. It's very odd. Will tries to get to know her by saying, "So Laken." He pauses as he glances past me at the boxes still piled high in the back seat. "Tell me about yourself." No, that's so cliche, I say. Grow up. Just tell him, you know? Like, say what you like, say how old you are, say what your plans are. Tell him your dad's dead if you must. Just tell him what you like in school, just grow up. That's what I wrote in my original script, and I stand by it more than ever now. Every bit of conflict in this book would have been solved if she had just answered his damn question here like a regular human being. Seriously, if I asked someone about themselves and, you know, because I was trying to be friends with them, I want to find out more about them, and this was their response of, no, that's so cliche, I'd be like, what the hell is wrong with you? What have I done? Are you okay? Like, I would be really offended. Is it because they're not interested in being friends with me? Is it because they're just being rude? Is it both? Either way, I'd be like, oh, okay then, well, guess I'll stop trying. Sorry. They bond over the band The Avett Brothers as though it's like some sort of, oh my god, that's so rare and unique and I don't know anyone else who listens to them, which I'll be honest is a response I've had before when, you know, someone says they like a band like I Said Yes, which is like one of my favourites, but you know, they have like 10 monthly listeners on Spotify. The Avett Brothers, on the other hand, are like 2.5 million per month. I think it's going to be fairly common for people to know. I know them. I've listened to them. Anyway, she's all like, oh my god, we had the same taste in music? Whoa, who'd have thought? And internally she's like, this must mean we're soulmates. I know. But she's like, ha, you're making this up. What's this song then? And she like starts playing one. And he's like, well, I call it Gabriella because apparently you can just make up your own name to songs now. But I think it's the end to one of their Pretty Girl songs. I love the end of this one when they break out the electric guitars. And I mean, let's be honest, if you know anything about the Avett Brothers, saying that it's probably one of their Pretty Girl songs makes you like 20% likely to be right, you know? Half of their songs are like Pretty Girl something. So, you know, I wouldn't say this makes him a super fan. Laken reminds us again that she is not like the other girls. I tend to listen to music that isn't typically mainstream. How is 2 million listeners a month not mainstream? Sorry. I tend to listen to music that isn't typically mainstream. It's rare when I meet someone that has even heard of half the bands I love. The Avett Brothers are my all-time favourite though. And then she gets sad because her dad got her tickets to go see them for her 18th birthday, but then he died and she didn't want to go, so she's never seen them play live. And her birthday was only 2 weeks ago, so... Oh no, it's okay, I remember the timeline now. He was getting them for her 18th birthday. The concert must have been in the last 2 weeks. Colleen does not think her timeline's through, right? Okay, the dad died 6 months ago, and he'd already bought the tickets then. So then the mum's like, oh, your dad got you these for your birthday in 5 months' time. Have them now. And she's like, boo-hoo, I'm too sad to go. So then she turns 18, like 5.5 months after her dad dies. And the tickets are probably for around that time. And then she refuses to go. And now 2 weeks later, she's in Michigan? One of the M states talking about this. Okay, right, okay, no. It does make sense. It's just a bit convoluted. Okay. Basically, she's never seen them play live, which is, you know, understandable when you're 18 and it's hard to see bands that you like and stuff like that, right? Anyway, skipping over all that nonsense, they finally get to the shop, it starts raining. We're out of breath and laughing when we make it inside the store, shaking the wetness from our clothes. I take my jacket off and shake it out when his hand brushes against my face, wiping a strand of wet hair away that's stuck to my cheek. His hand is cold, but the moment his fingers graze my skin, I forget about the frigid temperatures when my face grows warm. His smile fades as we both stare at each other. I'm still trying to become accustomed to the reactions I have around him. The slightest touch and simplest gestures have such an illicit effect on my senses. Yeah, it's called lust and attraction. Calm down, love. We all experience it at some... Well, actually, not all of us. A lot of us experience it at some point. You don't know this guy. You don't have this once-in-a-lifetime special connection. You just think he's hot, and this is what happens. It's okay. He mocks her for being southern and coming from Texas and saying y'all, but tells her not to change because I like your accent. It's perfect. I can't believe I've actually turned into a girl who swoons over a guy. I detest it so much. I start to inspect his features more intently, trying to find a flaw. I can't. Everything about him so far is perfect. Yet it's easy to find a guy perfect when you don't even know him. You've known him less than 24 hours. You've spent a total of 24 minutes with him. Like 4 minutes in the morning, 20 now. Of course he's perfect. He's still a stranger to you. The only person you can know for that short a period of time, think they're perfect and be right, is a dog. They get their shopping, they drive home, she makes a joke and he acts all creepy. I sort of expect him to laugh, but he just stands there, staring at me. That's weird, right? What? I ask nervously. He takes a step towards me and slowly cups my chin with his free hand. I'm shocked by my own reaction, the fact that I allow it. He studies my face for a few seconds as my heart races within my chest. I think he's about to kiss me. I attempt to calm my breathing as I stare up at him. He steps in even closer and removes his hand from my chin and places it on the back of my neck, leaning my head in towards him. His lips press gently against my forehead, lingering a few seconds before he releases his hand and steps back. You're so cute, he says. Yeah, this is definitely weird, right? I was thinking at this point, I was like, he's kind of infantilizing her a little bit and it feels a bit kind of creepy. Yeah, my vibes were spot on. You'll see. I'm frozen, attempting to absorb the last 15 seconds of my life. Where did that come from? Why did I just stand there and let him do that? Despite my objections, I realise almost pathetically that I have just experienced the most passionate kiss I've ever received from a guy, and it was on the freaking forehead. Laken, babe, do we need to have a discussion about what the term passionate means? You maybe need to raise your standards. Will introduces himself to her mum, and it turns out that he's 21 and he asks her to go out with him tomorrow night, and before she can answer, he's like, great, pick you up at 7:30. And that's the end of the first chapter. At this point, I was a bit 21 and 18. It's a difficult age gap because they're not that far apart, but they could potentially be at very, very different places in life, especially because she's still in school. That said, I was still thinking at this point, well, his parents have died, so he's got more responsibility. He's clearly working and stuff. But he's probably skipped out on college and he's saving up some money to go or something. So chances are they're probably both actually at a pretty similar place in life. Stage, that's the word I'm looking for. A similar stage in life. So I wasn't that opposed to it. I thought, you know what, this could actually work absolutely fine. This is okay. I think in this case it comes down less to the age gap and more of responsibilities and experiences and that sort of thing. And I was gonna be absolutely okay with this. You'll see. I could not have been more wrong about being okay with it. Their similar experiences are being at similar then I'll just say they're about as far apart in life stages as an 18 and 21-year-old can be. And it's fine. We'll get there. We'll get there. This book makes me quite angry. Chapter 2. So at this point, I was feeling quite optimistic. I was like, this is a little cringy, but honestly not as bad as most Colleen Hoover books. There's been no violent outbursts, no locking people in rooms, only some slightly controlling behaviour and non-consensual touching from men. I would call that a win by her standards. And I was like, I mean, we still have 90% of the book to go, but that's not the point. I was impressed. I was like, you know what, the worst we're going to get out of this video is a little bit of cringy poetry. I'm good with this. It'll be a nice light video. We'll have a giggle. I was naive. Okay, so Laken, or Lake, is getting ready for her date, and she is not like the other girls, because instead of spending hours agonising over what to wear because it'll make her look good, she spends hours agonising over anything to wear because she's trying to locate any clean, weather-appropriate clothing. I don't own many winter shirts beside what I've already worn this week. I choose a purple long-sleeve shirt and smell it, deciding it's clean enough. Guys, I'm not like the other girls. I have questionable hygiene. Her mum comes in and Laken says she's aged so much in such a short time since my dad's death. Her bright green eyes against her smooth porcelain skin used to be breathtaking. Now her cheekbones stand out above the hollowed shadows in her cheeks. The dark circles under her eyes overpower their emerald hue. She looks tired and sad. Yeah, God forbid a woman age or grieve. I'm pretty sure I'd look the same if my partner just died, you know? Her mum gives her dating advice, which is don't order anything with onion or garlic, never leave your drink unattended, and always use protection. Not sure that should be the order of priority, but here we are. At least it's better than any advice my mum ever gave me, which was none. So, I'll take it. She seems quite a good parent by Hoover's standards. It does kind of make me wonder what dating advice Colleen Hoover gave her own son, though. You know, the same son who was accused of sexually harassing and or assaulting a 16-year-old girl, and then when the girl spoke up about it, Colleen Hoover blocked her. Yeah, I wonder what advice she gave him. Laken admits to her mum that she knows absolutely nothing about Will because she's been incredibly self-centered and refused to even ask about him or get to know him in any way, although she doesn't phrase it like that. It's the case. All she knows is his name is Will and he's hot, and she's about to have him drive her off somewhere without her knowing where they're going. Where is your sense of self-preservation? At least get the guy's surname, his age, his occupation. Is he on the sex offenders register? If not, he should be soon. Growing up, my mother did give great advice. She always knew what I wanted to hear, but would tell me what I needed to hear. My dad was her first boyfriend, so I've always been curious how she seems to know so much about dating boys and relationships. She's only been with one person, and it seems most knowledge would have come from life experiences. She's the exception, I guess. Or your mum and dad had a secret open relationship for the last 18 years, and your mum's actually been with hundreds of guys, and she's absolutely smashing it and living her life. Okay, that's not true, but I kind of wish it was. If it was, the mum would become my new favourite Colleen Hoover character, narrowly replacing the dog that we see for about 3 lines in the Verity epilogue. He was my favourite up to this point. Good dog. Laken asks her mum if she ever regrets being with only one man from the age of 18, and the mum replies saying that she doesn't, but she has questioned it, which is different, because questioning is not regret. Regret is counterproductive. It's looking back on a past that you can't change. Questioning things as they occur can prevent regret in the future. I questioned a lot about my relationship with your father. People make spontaneous decisions based off of their hearts all the time. There's so much more to relationships than just love. Surprisingly insightful from Colleen. I was really impressed. I mean, the mum does backtrack at the end of the book, which is a shame, but if you stopped reading right here, you'd get some decent information. Mum then says there are 3 questions every woman should be able to answer yes to before they commit to a man. If you answer no to any of these questions, run like hell. Does he treat you with respect at all times? That's the first question. The second question is, if he's exactly the same person 20 years from now that he is today, would you still want to marry him? And finally, does he inspire you to want to be a better person? You find someone you can answer yes to all 3 and you've found a good man. Wow, these are some intense questions. I take a deep breath as I soak in even more sage advice from her. And you know what? Honestly, not bad advice. It's a shame none of Colleen Hoover's other protagonists fit this, isn't it? But, it's good advice. Also, it's interesting because I thought this was going to be something that Laken kept coming back to and, assessing for herself. And, she would answer these and decide she wanted to be with Will. But, no. They never come up again. Not once. In another time jump, because of course nothing happens when the characters aren't with their love interests, or talking about them, suddenly it is 7:30 at night and it is time for the date. On the way in the car, she asks him what his parents are like, and he's like, I'm not big on small talk, Lake. We can figure all that out later. Let's make this drive interesting. Honestly, bit of a red flag, right? If a guy is so avoidant of a basic direct questions like this, he's hiding something. And I was right. Again, if he just answered this and just told her basic facts about himself, again, like his name, his age, his occupation, the basic things, everything in this book could have been avoided. Their refusal to talk to each other like human beings is the cause of all their problems. He says he wants to talk about something unexpected, so he suggests they play Would You Rather, which is so unique and no teen has ever done that before, right? No, I say teen, he is like 21. But at this point I was like, oh, cool. So like, she is at least showing that he's quite immature for his age. He's still doing this teenage stuff of like, let's just play games and like, I thought this was fine. But I mean, everyone is in a different place in life at different ages, right? There's not really necessarily one right place to be or one right way to do life or anything like that. Like, 21, I was head of marketing for this online book retailer and living by myself and blah, blah, blah. Whereas he is in a car refusing to talk about his parents with a high school girl. In my notes I said you can have very different lives at the same age. Put a pin in this thought. We'll come back to it. Okay, he clears his throat and pauses for a few seconds. Okay, would you rather spend the rest of your life with no arms, or would you rather spend the rest of your life with arms you couldn't control? What the hell? I can honestly say this date has definitely not started the way any of my previous dates have gone. It's pleasantly unexpected, though. He's acted like a regular teenage boy. What's so shocking? God's sake. He starts holding her hand as he's driving, which feels dangerous, but let it slide, I guess. I like the game we're playing. I like that he didn't worry about impressing me with dinner. I like that I have no idea where we're headed. I even like that he didn't compliment what I was wearing, which seems to be the standard opening line for dates. So far, I like everything about tonight. As far as I'm concerned, we could drive around for another 2 hours just playing Would You Rather, and it would be the most fun I've ever had on a date. I refuse to believe Colleen Hoover has ever actually been on a date and she knows what dates are like. I think her idea of dating just comes from like what she's seen in cheesy Hallmark films, which we all know is not real life. Laken and Will end up at a place called Club 9, where the I is replaced by the number 9, so you know they're super edgy and super illiterate. Unsurprisingly, it is a slam poetry event. Who'd have thunk it with the title of the book and everything? Laken is like, what's a slam? And Will says, it's poetry. It's what I'm all about. Is he for real? A hot guy who makes me laugh and loves poetry? Someone pinch me. Or not. I'd rather not wake up. And then they go inside and he's like, do you want something to drink? And she's like, yeah, I'll have some chocolate milk, please. Based on everything we know that happens later, I have to say, Will, was this not like just a little red flag for you where you maybe thought, maybe she is too young for me to date? I take her to a club and she orders chocolate milk. Now, look, I don't want to shame anyone for what they eat or drink or what they like or anything like that. I'm the fussiest eater in the world, I get it, you know? But also, of all the places you would want to drink chocolate milk, a grotty club is kind of the last place, isn't it? Can you even get chocolate milk in a club? He takes a sip from his drink, then leans back against a booth, finding my hand in the dark. Our fingers don't interlock this time though. Instead, he places my hand on his leg, and his fingertips start to trace the outline of my wrist. He gently traces each of my fingers, following the lines and curves of my entire hand. His fingertips feel like electric pulses penetrating my skin. Lake, he says quietly as he continues to trace up my wrist and back to my fingertips with a fluid motion. I don't know what it is about you, but I like you. Of course you don't know what it is. You don't even know her. You've known her less than 24 hours. Well, maybe like 30 hours at this point, right? I don't know. Colleen Hoover really needs to stop mixing up lust and love. Okay, time for the first poem at this event from a woman who I don't think ever actually gets a name. She's just a woman. She raises her hand to the microphone, still staring down at the floor. She begins to tap her finger against it in a repetitive motion, resonating the sound of a heartbeat. My microphone is not made for hitting. Okay, we get the first performance. Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Bom bom, bom bom, bom bom. Do you hear that? Her voice lingering on the word hear. That's the sound of my heart beating. She taps the microphone again. Bom bom, bom bom, bom bom. Do you hear that? That's the sound of your heart beating. She begins to speak faster, much louder than before. It was the first day of October. I was wearing my blue sweater. You know, the one I bought at Dillard's, the one with the double knitted hem and holes in the ends of the sleeves so that I could poke my thumbs through when it was cold and I didn't feel like wearing gloves. It was the same sweater you said made my eyes look like reflections of the stars on the ocean. You promised to love me forever that night. And boy, did you ever. It was the first day of December this time. I was wearing my blue sweater, you know, the one I bought at Dillard's, the one with the double knitted hem and holes in the ends of the sleeves so I could poke my thumbs through when it was cold and didn't feel like wearing gloves. It was the same sweater you said made my eyes look like reflections of the stars on the ocean. I told you I was 3 weeks late. You said it was fate. You promised to love me forever that night. And boy, did you ever. It was the first day of May. I was wearing my blue sweater. Although this time the double-stitched hem was worn and the strength of each thread tested as they were pulled tight across my growing belly. You know the one. The same one I bought at Dillard's. The one with the holes in the ends of the sleeves I could poke my thumbs through when it was cold but didn't feel like wearing gloves. It was the same sweater you said made my eyes look like reflections of the stars on the ocean. The same sweater that you ripped off my body as you shoved me to the floor, calling me a whore, telling me you didn't love me anymore. Bom bom, bom bom, bom bom. Do you hear that? That's the sound of my heart beating. Bom bom, bom bom, bom bom. Do you hear that? That's the sound of your heart beating. There's a long silence as she clasps her hands to her stomach, tears streaming down her face. Do you hear that? Of course you don't. That's the silence of my womb, because you ripped off my sweater. So it's a poem about a woman who is with a man, gets pregnant, he attacks her, maybe rapes her, she loses her baby. Once again, Colleen Hoover has never made a womb that she didn't impregnate. Like, I feel a bit heartless saying this, but all these people in poems are fictional, so I'll just go for it, okay? Just because a poem is about something sad, that doesn't make it good. I like the reoccurring image of the jumper and how it changes with her body. You know, that thread tested as they were pulled tight across my growing belly. Nice metaphor for how the stress of pregnancy also tested their relationship too. That's great, I love that. But there's also a lot of insignificant stuff in there. What's the point of the sweater being blue? That's never really explored or looked at or presented in a creative way. What's with the thumb holes in the sleeves? Again, that's not really explored. What's the point of her eyes looking like stars in the ocean? It's a nice image, I guess, but what's the point of it? Why is it there? What does it have to really do with anything? In a good poem, she'd have maybe had some sort of change in the colour of her eyes with the circumstances, you know? Make the sweater blue at the beginning and then pink as she grows with love and then red at the end to show the violence, you know, instead of just telling us. You could make her eyes start off blue, like stars in the ocean or whatever, and then end up being, I don't know, grey, muddy puddles to show how miserable she is by the end of it, you know? Show us these changes, don't just tell us. In a similar vein, I didn't necessarily need that 3 weeks late line to show me you're pregnant. Just show me the tight sweater and the growing belly. That's enough. Show us you're pregnant, don't tell us it. And why did we need the sweater being ripped off twice? The first time, we get told it's a shock, I get that. But we already know it's happened and then that violence followed. So we don't necessarily need that last line of, because you ripped off my sweater. Sorry, my tummy's rumbling, I'm quite hungry. It just loses its impact at that point. It's not really this punchy last line that you think it is, because we've already been told it. And there's not really a point to you repeating it. So it's repetitive without being impactful. It's not a use of repetition for a good reason. If anything, the repetition is to a detriment because it makes it less powerful. You can tell that Colleen Hoover is absolutely not a poet. If you would like some recommendations for poems written from mostly women, one second, here it is. Written mostly from women, but I think there's a whole bunch of people who've contributed to this. But it's basically a bunch of feminist poems about issues like violence that women face and standing up for women's rights. My words are not working today. I think I need to go take a break and get some food. Basically, a book I would recommend for feminist poetry is this. Women of Resistance, Poems for New Feminism, a little anthology edited and collected by Daniel Barnhart and Iris Mahan. It's a great little collection with some really, really wonderful pieces in here. The ones I've spoken about before include things like, and you might have seen these in my other videos, you've got Elizabeth Acevedo's An Open Letter to the Protesters Outside the Planned Parenthood Near My Job. That's one I've spoken about in quite a few videos and it's really, really good. Some of my favourite pieces in here are by Jacqueline Jones Lamont. They're really great. You've got the absolutely fantastic Joyce Pesaroff's poem beginning with items from the Vienna Museum of Contraception and Abortion. That's a short one, really, really powerful and impactful. What else is in here? Basically, it's very big on like intersectional feminism. It also covers like racial inequality and, you know, it's not just purely about gender. It's got lots and lots of issues that face women today, all told through poetry and explored, and it's brilliant and wonderful, and I thoroughly recommend that book. Better than anything Colleen Hoover wrote. Right, let's get to the end of this chapter and then I'm going for a snack break. So, I wasn't a fan of this poem, but Lacan absolutely loved it. I take a deep breath and wipe tears from my eyes. I'm mesmerised by her ability to hypnotise an entire audience with such powerfully portrayed words. Just words. I'm immediately addicted and want to hear more. So, as much as I hated the poem that Colleen wrote, I do actually kind of love and appreciate Lacan's love of poetry here. I can't snark on that, I feel the same. The poetry, she says, the poetry is as vast and electrifying as the audience. I've never laughed and cried so much. The way these poets are able to lure you into a whole new world, viewing things from a vantage point that you've never seen before. Making you feel like you are the mother who lost her baby, the boy who killed his father, or even the man who got high for the first time and ate 5 plates of bacon. I feel a connection with these poets and their stories. And yeah, good poetry absolutely does do that. It does give you that connection. So I'm not going to snark on that. Not at all. It's a shame Colleen Hoover can't write good poetry that conveys all of that, but here we are. Lacan then goes on to say, more so, I feel a deep connection to Will. I can't imagine that he's brave enough to get up on that stage and bare his soul like these people are doing. Which is odd because you know literally nothing about him. Lacan eventually bullies Will into getting up and performing a poem, and it is something. I wrote at this point, I think this could be the edgiest character Colleen Hoover's ever written, and that's not a compliment. I can imagine this poem being written by, you know, little goth kids on South Park? This poem is titled Death. Death. The only thing inevitable in life. People don't like to talk about death because it makes them sad. They don't want to imagine how life will go on without them. Or the people they love will briefly grieve but continue to breathe. They don't want to imagine how life will go on without them. Their children still grow, get married, get old. They don't want to imagine how life will continue to go on without them. Their material things will be sold, their medical files stamped closed, their name becoming a memory to everyone they know. They don't want to imagine how life will go on without them. So instead of accepting it head on, they avoid the subject altogether, hoping and praying it will somehow pass them by, forget about them, moving on to the next one in line. No, they don't want to imagine how life would continue to go on without them. But death didn't forget. Instead, they were met head-on by death, disguised as an 18-wheeler behind a cloud of fog. No, death didn't forget about them. If they only would have been prepared, accepted the inevitable, laid out their plans, understood that it wasn't just their lives at hand. I may have legally been considered an adult at the age of 19, but I still felt very much all of just 19, unprepared and overwhelmed, to suddenly have the entire life of a 7-year-old in my realm. Death, the only thing inevitable in life. I'm sorry, but people don't like to talk about death because it makes them sad. Are you serious right now? This is like what 8-year-old me would have written when I was getting over losing my granny, you know? Death makes people sad. Wow, wow, wow. I was like, come on. Get some depth. Give us some. And this poem is like, Colleen wants us to think it's like the best one in the book. This is one, like, she keeps coming back to it. She has him analyse this poem later on, line by line, and like explain what he was thinking with each bit and how it like totally relates to you guys. It's like, people don't like to talk about death because it makes them sad. I'm sorry, but this is not a poem. This is just exposition with line breaks. So what I'm getting from this is both Will's parents are dead. He's mad as they didn't do more to prep when they died, and now he has to look after his little brother. But it's not like they knew they were going to die. They got hit by a truck. It's not their fault. I don't know. Okay, great. Tells us his backstory, but where's the poetry? Where's the imagery, the metaphors, the playing around with structure, the play on words, the creative language, the absolutely anything at all? If you would like to read some really excellent poems centered around grief, then the newest volume of the Poetry Pharmacy has a really great chapter/section for you. Let me find it for you. I love and have always recommended the Poetry Pharmacy books. They're fantastic. And this new one that's only been out a couple of months, I think, is called The Poetry Pharmacy Forever. And it's got a section in here called Grief and Its Geysers, and it has a whole bunch of really interesting poems exploring feelings around grief. The ones in particular that I would suggest are Death Is Nothing at All by Henry Scott Holland and Long Distance 2 by Tony Harrison. I think they're both absolutely fantastic and really good at exploring grief and what it's like. Long Distance 2 in particular I really love because it's about how life still continues after death, but how each of us grieve in very different ways in our own way, and how even though society kind of might make us think there's a right and wrong way to grieve, there's really not. It's all about what helps us and helps us get through it and helps us cope, and you know, how we keep going day by day. So yeah, thoroughly recommend that book. Actually, if you want to check out any of the books I've mentioned, I'll leave some links down in the video description. There will be affiliate links if that's okay, which just means if you buy anything through those links, I get a couple of pence back. It's not much, but it all adds up and just helps support my channel and my work, so thank you. Let's get back to this. I have no idea how to react. I had no idea that this was his life, that Calder was his whole life. I'm amazed by his performance, but devastated by his words. I wipe tears away with the back of my hand. I don't know if I'm crying for the loss of Will's parents, the responsibilities of that loss, or the simple fact that he spoke the truth. He spoke about a side of death and a loss that never seems to be considered until it's too late, a side that I'm unfortunately all too familiar with. The Will I watched walk up on that stage is not the same Will I'm watching walk towards me. I'm conflicted, I'm confused, and most of all, I'm taken aback. He was beautiful. Told you, bonding over dead parents is what's going to get them together. Call it. I feel his breath draw closer as he pulls my face towards his. When he touches his lips to mine, he hesitates. He slowly kisses my bottom lip, then my top lip. His lips are still warm, still wet from his drink. I try to kiss him back, but he pulls away when my mouth responds. I open my eyes and he's smiling at me, still holding my face in his hands. Patience, he whispers. He leans in and kisses me on the cheek. He moves his mouth to my other cheek and kisses me again. I close my eyes and inhale as I try to calm the overwhelming impulse. I have to wrap my arms around him and kiss him back. I don't know how he has so much self-control. He presses his forehead against mine and slides his hands down onto my arms. Our eyes lock as we open them. It's during this moment I finally understand why my mother accepted her fate at the age of 18. Mate, you're 18. You've known him like 24 hours. You're thinking with your vagina and nothing else. Stop it. Stop thinking you're going to marry this man. I've never experienced anything like what just happened. Ever. Yeah, because you're 18 and you haven't lived yet. Wait until you figure out what an orgasm is, and then you can think about if you want to spend your life with him, yeah? Do it in that order. They leave and go to the car, and he opens my door, but before I can get in, he wraps his arms around my waist and pulls me to him in a tight embrace. He runs his hands through my hair as I take in his scent. I try to pull him closer, but we can't seem to get close enough. Several minutes pass as we just stand there, holding on to the moment. I've always been so guarded. This new side of me that Will brings out is a side I didn't know I had. Yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. You've known him a day. I mean, I say a day. Technically, like, 3 days, but the first day they were with each other for, like, all of 2 minutes, so that doesn't really count. The second day, they had, like, 20 minutes in the morning, and then like a 20-minute car ride, and that's it. And now you've had one date. It all adds up to about 2 hours together. He squeezes my waist tighter and moves me closer into him. Our bodies are a perfect fit. Lake, I already miss you, he whispers in my ear. A chill runs down my body as his breath warms my neck. I can't believe we only met 3 days ago. It seems like we've been doing this for years. Oh, stop it. Am I just too old and cynical for this? Will and the brother have to go away for like 3 days, and I thought this was going to be like a big thing, right? How he has to keep going away and blah blah blah, and it puts strain on their relationship, or he's like hiding something, it's a big secret. No, he's just gonna go visit his grandparents for a weekend. It happens like once a month. It's really not a big deal. That's it. Just think, I say. You'll be gone 3 whole days. That's the same length of time that I've known you. I didn't think it was possible, but he pulls me even closer. This will be the longest 3 days of my life, he says. Mate, you lost your parents, and you're acting like this is worse. Stop it. I forgot to tell you something, he says as he wraps his arms around me again. You look beautiful tonight. He kisses me on the top of my head, releases his hold and turns back towards his house. Maybe I was wrong earlier about me liking the fact he didn't compliment me tonight. I was definitely wrong. Look, I get meeting someone new is exciting, especially when they're attractive. I get that lust is great, all those butterflies, first kisses, it's lovely, it's exciting, but you're 18 and you don't know him. Let's not pretend this is something it isn't. You're attracted to him, you're having fun, everything is great, but this doesn't mean he's your one true love soulmate forever. You know? Chapter 3, and it's Laken's first day at school. I'm going to take a break, get myself something to eat, and we'll be back for more nonsense. Don't know what I'm telling you. I could just disappear and you would never know. But I'm filling you in on my life. Enjoy. It is Laken's first day of school, and with Will away over the weekend, she finally had a chance to buy some weather-appropriate clothing. So she gets to school, she parks up, she goes inside, and she is shocked to find that absolutely no one cares about her or notices she's there. I made it through first period math without being assigned homework, which is good. I plan on spending the entire evening with Will. When I woke up this morning, there was a note on my Jeep from him. All it said was, "Can't wait to see you. I'll be back by 4. I've missed you so bad." 7 hours and 3 minutes to go. So she makes this friend called Eddie, who is a girl. She's very keen, a bit controlling, doesn't really give Laken any space or choice in the matter, but here we are. She just takes Laken's phone out of her hand and calls herself on it, and then tells Laken that she has to switch lunch times so they can be together. I don't know. Some people might see this as being friendly. I find it a little terrifying. So Laken is on her way to an English class, a poetry class, and she kind of gets lost on the way, and she then sees Will, and I was like, oh my god, he works at the school, like a caretaker or something. That's what he's doing to support him and his brother. He's 21, he's the caretaker. I was like, she'd know this if she bothered to ever, ask him anything about herself, but she just jumps to conclusions immediately, and she thinks he must be there because he's cheating on her with another child. He's horrified to see me. He turns away from me and clasps his hands behind his head. I don't understand his reaction. I stand there waiting for some sort of explanation when it dawns on me. He's here to see his girlfriend. The girlfriend that he failed to mention. I snatch my backpack up immediately and start to walk away when his arm reaches out and pulls me to a stop. Where are you going? He demands. I roll my eyes and let out a short sigh. I get it, Will. I get it. I'll leave you alone before your girlfriend sees us. I'm trying to hold back tears at this point, so I step out of his grasp and turn away. She's acting like a child, but that's because she is a child. In school. And this is why adults shouldn't date children. So at this point I was like, okay, well, either he's a janitor or he is creeping around with some other child. It turns out this 21-year-old man person is apparently a teacher. He's doing he's kind of student teaching, but for some reason that means they've given him a whole class anyway, and then he's working up to a full-time. Well, no, he has a full-time. I don't know. It's stupid logic. It doesn't make sense. Basically, Colleen Hoover just needed him to be a teacher and for it to not be too creepy because there's only 3 years between them. But you know all that stuff I was saying earlier about like them being at similar stages in life, so it kind of made those 3 years seem not so bad? Yeah, no. They're at completely different stages in life. She is still a child in school and he is her teacher. Nothing would make this appropriate. With each step he takes, I catch a glimpse of his faculty badge as it sways back and forth from his neck. He flattens his palm against the lockers, repeatedly tapping his forehead against the metal. "How did I not see this?" he says as he drops his hands and turns towards me. "You're still in high school?" Yeah, well, you might have known this if you bothered to, like, ask her anything about herself, or if she'd bothered to answer. I don't understand how you can be in his position and be like, hey, I am a grown man who is in charge of looking after children, and then you meet a stranger who looks very young, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to bother asking her age or anything about her before I start kissing her. It's irresponsible. I will be honest, this is not a twist I saw coming. I thought he was going to be the janitor, not her teacher, so it definitely shocked me, but in a way that I hate it. And I completely understand why books generally have content warnings. So yeah, it turns out Will is not only a teacher, but he is her teacher, her poetry teacher. And you know what, at this point I was like, look, Will, you were stupid, you were a bit irresponsible, you made a mistake, but now you know she is a student in your care, she is a child in your care, so you need to go and tell your bosses what happened, have her moved out of your class immediately, and maintain a professional distance with the child you tried to date. Don't see her outside of work, don't see her at work, just cut contact. That is it. That is the only responsible thing he can do in this situation. Anything else and you're a creepy grooming predator. You are in a position of power here. Do not abuse it because she makes your penis twitchy, okay? He says, there's been a huge misunderstanding between the two of us. He doesn't make eye contact with me as he speaks. We need to talk about this, but now is definitely not the right time. So first part, good response. Second part, no. There's nothing to talk about. Step away from the student in your care. This is a bit of a touchy subject for me, personally, and I just have no patience for it. None. So they head into the classroom. Will doesn't tell his bosses because he's an idiot, and they go into the classroom, and this other student, whose name is Javier, I think, makes a comment about Laken being hot, and Will loses it with him out of jealousy and throws him out of the classroom. Obviously, Laken is mortified. I don't turn around, but I can feel most of the eyes in the classroom on me, waiting for some sort of reaction. It's not so easy to blend in. Now, yeah, you don't think. Like, your teacher's just had a jealous fit at another student over you. Obviously, an inappropriate relationship like this is gonna make other students look at you differently and treat you differently. This is just reason, 7,000 why these relationships are a bad idea. Laken takes a test in the class just to avoid having to deal with the obvious. The fact that the boy I was falling in love with is now my teacher. Yeah, and let's not call this grown man in a position of authority over you a boy. Yeah? Also, stop it. You knew him 3 days. You're not falling in love. Laken decides that the mature way to deal with this situation is to avoid it by hiding in the school toilets and crying all afternoon. So, very mature, very grown up. Definitely someone who should be dating their English teacher. I replay everything over in my head. How did I spend so much time with him and not know he was a teacher? How can something as big as an occupation not come up in conversation? Or better yet, how did I do so much talking and fail to mention the fact I was in high school? I know this, I can tell you how. 'Cause you straight up refused to answer any of his questions, and so did he. Neither of you bothered to actually ask anything about the other, and neither of you bothered to tell each other anything about the other. This could have all been resolved with basic communication. This is your own fault. I'm sorry, are we forgetting lines like, and this is a quote from just a chapter earlier, "Tell me about yourself. No, that's so cliche," from her, and with him, "I'm not big on small talk, like, we can figure all that out later." You both did this. That said, everything is kind of starting to make sense now. I mean, with how bad his poetry is, it's no wonder he goes after children, because lines like that are not working on anyone else, are they? When she finally gets home, Will is waiting for her. Creep. I am going to say this every time they're alone together. Step away from the student in your care right now. What are you thinking? He asks. I sit up and turn towards him, pulling my right leg up onto the seat, hugging it with my arms. I'm confused as hell, Will. I don't know what to think. He sighs and turns to look out the passenger window. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. It's nobody's fault. I disagree. In order for there to be fault, there has to be some sort of conscious decision. You didn't know, Will. No, it's both your faults because you both made the conscious decision to not tell each other anything about yourselves or ask anything about the other person. You just flat out refused. This is your fault. His more than hers because, you know, she's the child in this. I mean, look, I know she's 18, but she's still in high school, which, for the purposes of this conversation, makes her a child. He sits up and turns to face me. That's just it, Lake. I should have known. I'm in an occupation that doesn't just require ethics inside the classroom. They apply to all aspects of my life. I wasn't aware because I wasn't doing my job. When you told me you were 18, I just assumed you were in college. Ha! Exactly. This is what I'm saying. It was your responsibility. It's your fault. Figure it out. Now step away from your student. She then makes it worse by saying, I've only been 18 for 2 weeks. I don't know why I felt the need to clarify that. After I say it, I realise it sounds like I'm placing blame on him. He's already blaming himself. He doesn't need me to be angry at him too. This was an outcome that neither of us could have possibly predicted. Once again, Will, step away from your barely legal student. I say barely legal. I think in the state they're in, it is still very much illegal with him being her teacher. Even in the UK, even if you're 16, 17, 18, whatever, it's still illegal to be involved with your student, even if they're over the age of consent. So then he explains that, like, he's a student teacher for the next 3 months. He fast-tracked everything after his parents died, and now he's going to be a real teacher soon. Whatever, doesn't matter. Point is, he's a teacher. He's her teacher. He's in a position of power. This is not okay. I listen as I take everything in he says. Really though, all I hear is, we can't be together, blah blah blah, we can't be together. Lake, I need this job. It's what I've been working towards for 3 years. We're broke, my parents left me with a mound of debt and now college tuition. I can't quit now. Does he think I'm asking him to quit his job? Will, I understand. I'd never ask you to jeopardise your career. You've worked hard. It would be stupid if you threw that away for someone you've only known for 3 days. Sorry, but he should be flat out saying, we can't be together. 2, he shouldn't be quitting his job so he can sleep with a student. He should be stepping away from the student. And 3, yeah, no one should give up their life, their job, their anything for someone they've known for 3 days. That's crazy. And 4, why are they just thinking about the rules and not the fact that this is completely inappropriate, and if they continue to have a relationship, this is going to cause her trauma that will affect her for the rest of her life? I do understand, I say. It's ridiculous to assume we even have anything worth risking. His eyes glance at the note on my console again as he hesitates. We both know it's more than that. You've known each other 3 days. Stop it. This sounds like love bombing, which is basically a tactic that abusers and groomers and predators are often known to use. His words cause me to wince because I know deep down he's right. Whatever was happening with us, it was more than just infatuation. I can't possibly comprehend at this moment what it must be like to actually have a broken heart. If it hurts even 1% more than the pain I'm feeling now, I'll forgo love. It's not worth it. I need you to go to administration tomorrow. I want you to withdraw from my class. I don't think we should be around each other anymore. I feel the blood rushing from my face. His hands start to sweat and the car is slowly becoming too small for the two of us. He really means it. Anything we had up to this point is over. He's going to shut me out of his life entirely. Good! As he should be doing, but it's not really her responsibility to change classes. He should be going to his bosses, explain the situation, and having her move that way. Simple as that. I would like her to agree to this and then for the book to end there and it to be a happy ending, please. Yeah, done. Cool. Sadly, no. It continues. Will says that what they have isn't appropriate, and she's like, but we're both mature enough to know what's appropriate, Will. No, you're not. You're a child. He is, so he should be stepping away from you, but you're a child in his care, and he has a position of power over you. I don't blame her as the child in this situation for not realising it's appropriate, but we have to point out that You are not mature enough to know what's appropriate and what it just no. I open the door to the car and grab my purse and keys. So you're saying it's either all or nothing, right? And since it obviously can't be all, I slam the car door and head towards the house. You'll be rid of me by third period tomorrow, I say as I purposely kick the gnome over with my boot. Yeah, it should be nothing between you. It's as simple as, God's sake. She is, I find this so infuriating because on the one hand, she's acting like a petulant child, but then she is so young and immature, so it makes sense she's acting like this. But then, because we see this immaturity, how does Colleen actually want us to root for this relationship? And how can we see her behaving like this, like a child, and this grown adult man who is her teacher sees this and thinks, yes, I would still like to sleep with her. Do you know what I mean? Laken's mum tries to ask what happened, but Laken just goes to her room, slams the door, and has a little cry with her purple hair clip. Chapter 5. Laken goes to change classes at school the next day, but needs Will to sign a form to okay it. While she's getting that done, she gets all shocked that he looks so professional. Yeah, because he's a teacher. It's part of his job to wear a shirt and stuff. Just then all the decent stuff that Will said yes to her about, them keeping a distance and it's all undone. Stupid man. I thought a lot last night about what you said yesterday, he says. It's not fair of me to ask you to transfer just because it makes me uneasy. We live 100 yards apart. Our brothers are becoming best friends. If anything, this class will be good for us. Help us figure out how to navigate when we're around each other. Besides, he says as he pulls a paper from his satchel and shoves it forward on the desk, you'll obviously breeze through, meaning she's good in his class. But this is crap. All of this is more reason to stay away from your student. This is absolute crap. All of it. And he's like, just stay in the class. It's fine. It'll only get easier from here. And she's like, being around him every day is definitely not going to get easier. I could move back to Texas today and I'd still feel too close to him. However, I still can't come up with a good enough argument for my conscience to convince me to switch classes. And this is why he needs to be the responsible adult here and maintain the appropriate boundaries. Anything else is predatory. Simple as that. So stupidly, she stays in the poetry class. And in that class, it seems that Will is already kind of like pushing boundaries of what's appropriate and not with his students, as he tells them that they have to come to Club 9 with him and perform a piece of slam poetry. So he's encouraging kids to go to a club with him outside of his class. Again, I'm kind of conflicted about this. I don't think it's a black and white situation, Anyway, Will is like, I'll perform one of my poems to the class. Not the worst poem in the book. You know what, I'm not going to even bother reading this out because it's kind of boring. It's whatever, okay. It's the best of a bad bunch, but that doesn't make it good, So then it's lunchtime, some nonsense happens. Laken says, I'm thankful to Eddie for accepting me into her group of friends so easily. Not that I had a decision, it was done pretty forcibly. In Texas, there were 21 people in my entire senior class. I had friends, but with such a limited pool to choose from, I never really considered any of them to be my best friend. It's not like she chose these people though, is it? Like they kind of chose her and forced her into... Anyway. Then, without any more Laken and Will interactions for a while, we get another big time skip, because again, nothing happens if our two love interests aren't together, remember? On Friday night, Laken's mother confronts her about Will being her teacher, but it's oddly victim-blamey from the mum, and I don't like it. She's like blaming her daughter for her teacher being predatory, He's a teacher at your school, Lake. She starts coughing and grabs a Kleenex as she gets up from the bar. After she regains her composure, she lowers her voice as she continues speaking in an attempt to avoid garnering attention from the 9-year-olds somewhere in our vicinity. Don't you think that's something you should have mentioned before I allowed you out of the house with him? I didn't know. He didn't know, I say in an overly defensive tone. She cocks her head to the side and rolls her eyes as though I've insulted her. What are you doing, Lake? Don't you realise he's raising his little brother? This can ruin his... I'm sorry, but if your concern is for his career over your daughter's well-being, there's something wrong with you. It's not your responsibility whether his career gets ruined or not. Your responsibility as Laken's mother is to stop her being groomed and creeped on by this predatory teacher. That's your responsibility here. And again, it's not necessarily Lake's responsibility to stop this relationship. It's Will's because he is the teacher, an adult in position of power. Also, I wrote in my notes, I'm calling it now, the mum coughed in this scene, so she's going to get an illness and die. She's been too nice so far for Colleen Hoover to let her live. I am a genius. Just saying. So the mum goes marching over to lecture Will, and he's full of the usual excuses that predators often use. She seemed older than she is. Blah, 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 blah. It's not my fault. Hate it. Basically, what it boils down to is that I made a lot of assumptions. I thought she was older. She seemed older. Once she told me she was 18, I guess I assumed she was in college. It's only September. Most students aren't 18 when they start their senior year. Then the mum has another coughing fit, so she is definitely going to die. We didn't find out until she showed up in my class, Will replies. My mother looks at me and her jaw gapes open. You're in his class? She looks at Will and repeats what she said. She's in your class? God, it sounds really bad coming from her mouth. Because it is really bad. It is. Now what the mum needs to do is go and report this to the school and get her kid out of this predator's class immediately. That is the only responsible thing to do in this situation. Both of you need to accept the severity of this situation. I know my daughter, and my daughter likes you, Will, a lot. If you share even a fraction of those feelings, you will do whatever you can to distance yourself from her. That includes ditching the nicknames. This will jeopardize your career and her reputation. She stands up and walks to the front door, holding it open for me to follow her out. She wasn't allowing us the opportunity for any private time. Sorry, but this is about more than just her reputation. I know what I said earlier about how, yeah, this kind of thing will damage her reputation. That's just one in thousands of reasons not to do it. But the bigger concern should be with her well-being and the trauma she would face from being groomed by a teacher. That's what your concern should be, yeah? I don't know. This crap sticks with you even when they wait until you're legal, you know? I don't feel comfortable talking about my own experiences personally, publicly, but what I will do is recommend some books for you. So Alison Wood's memoir, Being Lolita, is probably one of the best books I've ever read, and one which really affected me deeply and I connected a lot with. And it's a memoir about how when she was a girl, her teacher showed an interest in her, and while he waited to sleep with her until after she left school, the trauma, and continued to do so for many years, and the trauma it caused her affected her whole life. And it wasn't until she was well into adulthood that she started to have these big realizations about how much he messed up her life and her. And there's a particular quote in that book which really resonates with me, and it actually inspired one of my own poems called Mr. Wolf, which is going to be available in my second poetry collection that I'm currently working on, which will hopefully be out by the end of the year, but we'll see. It's my year-end goal is to get that together. But yeah, in her book, Alison writes, I realise when I blossomed under the attention and care of my teacher, I was asking for the support I desperately needed. I wasn't asking to be fucked. And that's something that kind of always sticks in my mind, you know? If a memoir is a little too real for you and you want something that is emotional but fiction because it's a little easier to digest, then I would recommend My Dark Vanessa, which covers a very similar topic. And what I really liked about who's My Dark Vanessa by again? Let me find it. Here we go, Kate Elizabeth Russell. What I really liked about this book is you have two kind of parallel timelines running. One is the story of when Vanessa was a child and being groomed by her teacher, and the other is when she is an adult and he is a hell of a lot older and they still have an ongoing sexual relationship, and it's been going on for years. And through it all, it starts with Vanessa completely defending him. She's like, look, it doesn't matter that it was inappropriate. What we had was real. We had real love, and she defends him to the ends of the earth, and she will fight for him. And then when other victims start to come forward and speak out about it, she starts to kind of look back at everything that happened and reevaluate it and see it all in this new light. What she thought was love and romance and, you know, two people fighting against the odds to be together and all that sort of thing, she's now like, oh crap, he manipulated me, he abused me, he used me, and she starts to see it all in a different light. And it takes her a really long time to come to terms with all this and realise it and accept it for herself. But thankfully she does. And it's needed, and it's just an excellent book. Thoroughly, thoroughly recommend it. Between this and Alison's book, they're wonderful, and I recommend them a million times over this nonsense by Colleen Hoover. What Colleen Hoover writes is dangerous. These books helped me process a lot, and I think they will help other people too. So, for God knows what reason, the mum's like, well, okay, don't worry, I won't tell the school, blah, blah, blah. And then they go home, and Lincoln has another tantrum filled with like, oh my God, Mum, why would you do that? And more crying and slamming doors and whatever. Like, it's fine. This is to be expected from a child in this situation. We get it. This is why Will needs to take responsibility and stay away from his student. Simple as that. Chapter 6. Laken's friends try and set her up with other guys, including this one guy who, I don't remember his name now. It's not important. It doesn't matter. He doesn't do anything. He just makes a bunch of bad jokes, which were already outdated even in 2013 when this was published, but Laken's not interested. This is kind of interesting because exclusion from peers is very common amongst victims of grooming. And we actually see that a hell of a lot. Laken kind of separates herself from some of her friends. She feels a bit left out of things. There's a big separate... it's one of the big signs of grooming, you know? In class, Will is like, you all need to write a poem and present it tomorrow. But Laken's like, how can I write a poem when all I can think about is Will? Wah! It says, by the end of the class period, the only thing that's written on my paper is my name. I glance up at Will, who is seated at his desk, biting the corner of his bottom lip. His eyes are focused on my desk, down on the poem I've yet to write. He glances up and sees me watching him. It's the first eye contact we've had in 3 weeks. Surprisingly, he doesn't immediately look away. If he had any idea how this lip-biting quirk affected me, he'd stop. The intensity in his eyes causes me to flush as the room suddenly becomes warm. His stare is impenetrable by nothing but the final class dismissal bell. He stands and walks to the door, holding it open for students exiting. I immediately put away my notebook and throw my bag over my shoulder. I don't make eye contact when I leave the classroom, but I can feel him watching me. Just when I think he's forgotten about me, he goes and does something like this. The entire rest of the day, I'm extremely quiet as I attempt to analyse his actions. I eventually come up with just one conclusion. He's as confused as I am. 2 points here. 1, all he did was look in your direction. You are reading into this, but that's fine because it's typical teenage hormones, you know? Over-analysing something that someone you have a crush on does, very normal for a teenager. That's why it's his responsibility to put a stop to it, you know? And 2, look how much this is already ruining everything else in her life. She's so focused on this relationship with her teacher, which isn't even a relationship yet, that she can't do her schoolwork, she can't concentrate. This is why teachers shouldn't even come close to entertaining the idea of a relationship with a student. If she'd been moved to another class and they had no contact, this wouldn't still be happening like this. Simple as that. In the car park, Laken's car won't start and Will sees her struggling and goes to help her because that's what literally any decent human being would do, right? But Laken reads into this. I don't understand what he's doing. One day he tells me he doesn't want to speak to me, the next minute he's staring me down in class, and now he's under my hood trying to help me. I'm not a fan of inconsistency. Now, I don't like to defend groomers, but I'm not actually seeing inconsistency from him here. He's helping a student with a car that won't start. Like, I think he'd literally do the same for any student he saw. I don't know. Anyway. And he points this out. He says, Laken, you're a student stranded in the parking lot. I'm not going to get in my car and just drive away. His comparison, although accurate, hurts. It's not a comparison. It's fact. He realises his poor choice of words and sighs as he gets out of the car and looks back under the hood. Is it a poor choice of words if it's true? Anyway. Lake, nothing about this has been easy. It's a daily struggle for me to come to work knowing that this very job is what's keeping us apart. He turns away from the car and leans against it. If it weren't for Calder, I'd have quit that first day I saw you in the hallway. I could have taken the year off, waited until you graduated to go back. He turned towards me, his voice lower than before. Believe me, I've ran every possible scenario through my head. How do you think it makes me feel to know that I'm the reason you're hurting? I'm the reason you're so sad. The sincerity in his voice is surprising. I had no idea. Over the last couple of weeks, I convinced myself he must have never even cared to begin with. Yeah, this is completely inappropriate. Stop it. Do not tell her this. You are leading her on. It is irresponsible. It is dangerous. Stop it and step away from your student. Thankfully, he doesn't redeem himself, but he gets slightly better again when the bad joke student, whose name again? Nick. His name is Nick. There we go. He turns up and he offers Lakin a lift home, and Will's like, yes, she'll take it. So he's clearly maintaining that distance between them, which is good. After driving her home, Nick asks her out on a double date with Eddie and Eddie's boyfriend, whatever his name is, and Lakin's like, oh no, maybe. Lakin goes home and threatens the small child who is Will's brother to never tell anyone he saw them kiss after their first date, and then she thinks to herself, ooh, Will's had to go through too much already, and she says, because Will's had to go through so much in his life, I feel less and less like Will's peer every day and more like his student. Yeah, because you're not his peer, you are his student. Yeah, there's only like 4 years or so between you, but at your age, that's a hell of a lot. And he's also had to deal with way more than most 21-year-olds. He's almost 22, I think. So it makes that gap even bigger, you know? Barely 18 and nearly 21. Questionable, but when you think about life experiences and his responsibilities now, that's like a vast chasm, you know? You are not his peer. You are his student. That is just a fact. The two little brothers go missing, and Will and Lakin have to search for them, and they're like, oh my god, where are they? And they're missing for a whole half a page, until it turns out they're just sleeping in the back of Will's car, because that's the thing kids do, apparently. It's pointless. It's all just done to throw Will and Lakin together and give them another excuse to talk to each other. Will tells Lakin that he had her car fixed for her, and Lakin is like, we need to be together. Why don't I just drop out of school and then we can be together? I'll just homeschool myself. And he's like, oh no, Lakin, don't be ridiculous. And I'm reading this screaming, yeah, don't be ridiculous. Don't throw your life away over some groomer, you know? I haven't been this close to him in weeks. I was beginning to forget what he smells like. I inhale as I take in the scent of his aftershave. It smells like the air in Texas right before it starts to rain. If thunder had a smell, I imagine Will would smell just like it. Gross. Will, I whisper, I'll wait for you until I graduate. He exhales and closes his eyes as he strokes his thumb across the back of my hand. That's a long wait, Lake. A lot can happen in a year. His pulse increases in my palm. Yeah, and it's also completely inappropriate. Stop touching her. Stop leading her. Just... But he's actually entertaining this. He's actually like, oh, but you know, the only reason we can't is because you might still not like me. And no, that's not why you can't. What he's saying is that you'll maintain a student-teacher relationship while she's still at school. A relationship which involves trust and responsibility and a huge power imbalance. Then as soon as it's legal, you'll start a romantic and sexual relationship just like none of that ever happened. There is a word for that, and it's grooming. He's not saying, I won't do this because it would be grooming you. He's saying we can't do this because you might not even like me in a year. Ridiculous. I hate this book. This is not romance. I think the worst part of this is that it's like often marketed as young adult and new adult, and mostly young adult. I've seen a lot of people talking about it as young adult, which means that teenagers are reading this, which is dangerous to them and gives them completely the wrong idea. I also found myself really struggling with this while reading this and writing this review because I went into this blind. I knew it was about slam poetry, and that was it. I didn't know it had this student-teacher element, and I kind of wish I did before going in because I found myself getting very emotional at times, and yeah, it's been hard. That's why I'm kind of racing through this process of writing and filming and editing because I want this out as quick as possible just to kind of get it over with, you know? I really can't believe that Colleen actually wants us to root for this couple, though, and thinks they're a good couple and it's a good idea. The only way this would be worse is if Colleen pulled a Pretty Little Liars and Lakin married her groomer at the end of it, you know? Now, just to throw this out there while we're talking about grooming, the NSPCC actually offers some reasons as to why a child might not seek help when they're being groomed, even if it's pointed out to them that they're being groomed, they might not accept it, they might not seek help for these reasons. 1, they're unaware that they're being groomed. 2, they believe they're in a caring relationship and are worried about jeopardizing it. 3, they're scared of what the groomer will do if they speak out. 4, they don't want to get the groomer into trouble. 5, they blame themselves for getting involved in the relationship. And 6, they're ashamed or worried about sharing what's happening to them with other people. Laken fits at least 5 out of 6 of these. I don't think she's scared of Will yet, but the rest, absolutely, yes. With all this in mind, Will starts to kiss and touch Laken. And I'm just going to remind you again that this is completely illegal, yes, even in their state. This is called educator sexual misconduct, and it is a crime. A more recent 2020 study, which is after this book was published but still, found that teachers and school staff are assumed to have power over students no matter what age. Therefore, the ability of the relatively powerless student to give consent is assumed to be impaired in such relationships. Therefore, it's clear that even though she's 18, Laken cannot consent in this situation. What he is doing is abuse, it is predatory, it is illegal. But she says, "I've missed his touch so much. I watch him as he moves his hands to my shoulder. He slides his fingers under the strap of my shirt as he traces along the edges. His movements are slow and methodical as he pulls his legs off the table in front of him and turns his body towards me. His expression seems full of conflict as he slowly leans in and presses his lips against my shoulder. I wrap my arms around his neck as I inhale. His breath becomes heavier as his lips move across my shoulder and onto my neck. Blah, 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 blah. This is gross. I don't like it. There's all this mushy, midget kissing and touching and very inappropriate. I return his kisses with the same feverish passion. I run my hands through his hair and pull him to me as I lay back on the couch. As soon as he begins to ease his body on top of mine, his lips break away and he sits back up. We've got to stop, he says. We can't do this. He squeezes his eyes shut and rests his head against the couch. Yeah, you've got to stop abusing your students. Step away from the child in your care. Stop it. This is not a cutesy romantic love scene. This is abuse. This is romanticized sexual assault. It's as simple as that. I sit back up and ignore his protest as I slide my hands up his neck and through his hair. I press my lips to his and pull myself onto his lap. His hands wrap around my waist and he pulls me into him as he returns my kisses even more intently than before. He's right, they do get better every time, and they're still just as illegal every time. Get in jail. He has a crisis of conscience again when she takes his shirt off and he's like, "I'm your teacher, this can't happen." Yeah, so stop doing it, you groomer. He's like, "My life is nothing but responsibilities. I'm raising a child, for Christ's sake. I wouldn't be able to put your needs first. Hell, I wouldn't even be able to put them second. You deserve better than third." Yeah, that's just reason 3,594 why they shouldn't be together. He makes a good point for a criminal. I stand up and walk over to him, kneeling on the couch in front of him. Stand up? Wait, they were on the settee. Anyway. I place my hands on top of his. "Your responsibilities should come before me, which is why I'll wait for you, Will. You're a good person." Debatable. "This thing about you that you think is your flaw, it's the reason I'm falling in love with you." My last few words trickle out as though I've lost what little control of myself I had left. I don't regret saying it, though. Again, stop it. You don't even know him. And what we do know of him is that he's a groomer and a predator and an abuser. I feel completely embarrassed. Embarrassed of what just happened between us and the fact he's making me feel desperate. Weaker than him. Yeah, that's how abusers often make you feel. Not surprising. Chapter 7, and Laken is talking about how she learnt about the 5 stages of grief and how she experienced them when her dad died, and now she's experiencing them again over losing Will. Boo-hoo-hoo, I don't care. In class, Gavin, I think that's the boyfriend of the forced friend Eddie, he gets up to do his poem titled Pre-Proposal, and I wrote in my notes, please don't let this be what I think it's going to be. 1,051,200 minutes. That's approximately how many minutes I've loved you. It's how many minutes I've thought about you. How many minutes I've worried about you. How many minutes I've thanked God for you. How many minutes I've thanked every deity in the universe for you. 1,051,200 minutes. 1,051,200 times. It's how many times you've made me smile. How many times you've made me dream. How many times you've made me believe. How many times you've made me discover. How many times you've made me adore. How many times you've made me cherish my life. Gavin walks towards the back of the room where Eddie is sitting. He bends down on one knee in front of her as he reads the last line of his poem. exactly 1,051,200 minutes from now, I'm going to propose to you and ask that you share the rest of the minutes of your life with me. What is this nonsense? Stop it. You're kids. No, but I mean, okay, the rushed, I'm getting married, what is it, all that aside. Again, where's the poetry? I guess we have a little anaphora going on here with the how many times you've made me, how many times you've made me, how many, but a bit angsty, a bit cliche, isn't it? And I'm sorry if I don't swoon at 17-year-olds planning to marry the minute they leave school. I can't deal with this crap. That said, if you thought that poem was immature, wait until you hear Laken's. At first she gets up in class and she's like, but Mr. Cooper, what if the poem doesn't rhyme? And he's like, yeah, that's fine, don't worry about it. So she reads her poem titled Mean. According to the thesaurus, and according to me, there are over 30 different meanings and substitutions for the word mean. I quickly yell the following words. The entire class flinches, including Will. Jackass, jerk, cruel, dickhead, unkind, harsh, wicked, hateful, heartless, vicious, virulent, unrelenting, tyrannical, malevolent, atrocious, bastard, barbarous, bitter, brutal, callous, degenerate, brutish, depraved, evil, fierce, hard, implacable, rancorous, pernicious, inhuman, monstrous, merciless, inexorable, and my personal favourite, asshole. I know, right? Come on, seriously. I like how most of these words were just like in alphabetical order. Atrocious, bastards, barbarians. Like, she clearly just literally copied and pasted out of a thesaurus, didn't she? So, funnily enough, this is actually a poetic technique called synonymia. And 4 or so years ago, when I made my first ever poetry video, I spoke about this phenomena briefly. I think I've also spoken about it in my intro to poetry video, I'm not sure. She Who Will Not Be Named, used synonymia in her poem Sticks, in which she also threw out a bunch of insults at someone. But a far better example of it that I used was in Caroline Duffy's Frau Freud, which uses lots and lots of synonyms for the word penis, and it's a very, very funny poem. It's basically mocking misogynists who think that every woman has penis envy and that having a penis somehow makes them better than everyone else in the world, and it's like, nah mate, you're fine. I was critical of Gabby's poem Sticks in that first video. I think I called it like a bit basic and cliched, but even hers was infinitely better than Colleen Hoover's attempt. Both Gabby and Caroline Duffy both used rhyme and meter in their poems. Both of their poems flowed well. They utilised rhythm to essentially convey the punchlines of their jokes in the poem. Both had considered to some degree the structure of the poem and how their use of line breaks would add to the poem's meaning. Colleen Hoover did none of that. She copied out of a thesaurus, hit paste, and that's it. It's one single sentence, split up with some random line breaks, and then just a list of shouted words in no particular order other than alphabetical for some of it, with no rhythm, no rhyme, no clever use of alliteration, no meaning. It's just lazy. At least in Caroline Duffy's poem, you've got a little bit of rhyme to make it funny. You know, member and jock, Percy and cock. Even Gabby manages to use rhythm to create this kind of like jovial tone to it where she's like while she's brutally insulting people. So you've got that juxtaposition of the tone and the content. Like, and it's shocking, it's surprising, it works. In this, it's just someone angrily shouting some words. This is not how you do synonymia well. Following this, in an attempt to make Will jealous, and it works, Laken tells Nick that she will go on that date with him, and then she fantasizes for a while about running Will over with her car, because she's such a mature, well-adjusted adult. Also, a little harsh when his parents died in a car crash. Yeah, a bit harsh. While she is at lunch with her friends, Will comes in and asks her to leave her friends and go chat with him, and she has a tantrum in front of him and cries at her desk, which is understandable for a victim of grooming, you know? They get interrupted by Eddie, and Will acts all suspicious, and Laken's like, it's fine, I'll just say you're mad with me for swearing in class. Laken gets home that night and overhears her mum on the phone being like, I'll tell them soon, I love you too, babe. And Laken immediately assumes that her mum is seeing someone else and is really mad about it, but I'm still going with the theory that she's dying. She was probably just talking to her sister or something, but it turns out her mum doesn't have a sister. I reckon it was probably her friend Brenda from earlier. I don't know, we never find out who it was, but I'm assuming Brenda. The next day at school, Laken is just like, ugh. She's like, I'm not going to English class. And then she calls him Will in front of Eddie instead of Mr. Cooper. Eddie clearly knows something is going on and says as much and tells Laken that she's in foster care, which is something you think would come up after being friends with someone for like 2 months. But it seems Laken is continuing with that theme of never asking anyone else about themselves because it worked out so well last time, didn't it? Has Colleen Hoover ever written a protagonist that isn't completely self-absorbed? I'm going with no. Then again, instead of any real character development, Eddie just gets a sad backstory. I'm an only child, born to a mother with a yearn for cheap crack and pricey babies. I shouldn't laugh at that, but come on. She tried to sell me. Don't worry, nobody wanted me. Or she was just asking too much. When I was 9, she offered me to a lady in a Walmart parking lot. She gave her a sob story about how she couldn't take care of me, yada yada, offered the lady a deal. $100 was my going rate. It wasn't the first time she tried this right in front of me. I was getting bored with it, so I looked right at the lady and said, "You got a husband, I bet he's hot." My mother backhanded me for ruining the sale, left me in the parking lot. The lady took me to the police station and dropped me off. That was the last time I ever saw my mum. There we go. Eddie then says that Eddie isn't actually her real name. She just chose that for herself because she wanted to pretend she was related to Eddie Izzard. Which is a choice, and honestly not something I expected from Colleen Hoover, but pretty damn cool. Also, funnily enough, with MyHeritage being the sponsor of this video, it's kind of funny, but I am kind of distantly related to Eddie Izzard, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Something like I don't know, we share like a great-great-great-grandmother or something like that. I don't know. Fun fact for you there. Seems like a pretty cool person as well. Yeah. Anyway, chapter 8. Laken decides to go rummaging through her mum's drawers because what is privacy? And she finds a poem. Honestly, it's not brilliant, but it is quite funny and it's better than anything Will has come out with so far, so I'll give it a pass. Clearly, this is just like a silly scribbled note between a couple, like an inside joke, you know? Julia, I'll paint you a world one day, a world where smiles don't fade, a world where laughter is played in the background like a PSA. I'll paint it when the sun goes down, while you're lying there in the ground. The moment your smile turns around, I'll paint right over your frown. I'll be finished when the sun breaks in, you'll wake with a still white grin. You'll see that I finished what I begin, the world I've painted on your chin. Yeah, whatever, it's not great, but still, yeah. But Laken, being the child that she is like, oh my god, it's pathetic. Actually, let me read you her words. It's pathetic. Whoever he is, I don't like him. I hate him. I fold the note up and put it back in its place. So she thinks this is some poem that, like, the mum's secret boyfriend has written for her. But I'm like, clearly the dad just wrote this before he died, right? It's just a silly little whatever between them. The mum gets home and Laken's just mad at her for no reason, and she shouts at her for taking a whole 5 seconds to choose a slice of pizza. She's like, they're all the same, just pick one. I'm like, no, they're not all the same. You take your time, you pick the nice ones first. Maybe you want more cheese, maybe you want more sauce, maybe you want more topping. Who knows? You've got to pick your battles with pizza, not battle. You got to take your time, pick the right slice for what you want, you know? But yeah, Laken just treats her mum so badly. And what is it with kids in Colleen Hoover books treating their decent parents badly? The, what's her name? The girl in Heartbones. Alizé just did a video on it that I edited for her. I can't speak today. The girl in that, she's like horrific to her dad. She's horrible, so mean, and the dad's never done anything wrong. She's like, you weren't there for me, and it's like, yeah, because you pushed him out, you didn't speak to him, you didn't ask him for help, and dad's done the best he can. Anyway, you know what? It's fine, I can forgive it. Abused kids do often lash out at the people who care about them. Just saying. You know, actually, a little bit of education again, the charity Darkness to Light, who work to combat child sexual assault, list some of the warning signs of abuse as the following. Sleep disturbances, these are like warning signs and also kind of consequences of abuse, if that makes sense. Sleep disturbances, changing eating habits, changes in mood that could include anger, aggressiveness towards parents, siblings, friends, pets, rebellion or withdrawal, change in attitude towards school or academic performance, lack of interest in friends, sports or other activities, poor self-esteem, avoidance of relationships, regression to previously outgrown behaviours, for example bedwetting or thumb sucking, or in this case, the emotional tantrums that Laken has. She says she used to have them as a kid and she kind of outgrew them, but then she started having them again after Will kissed her last time. So we have seen all of these behaviours from Laken so far. She's stopped sleeping properly, she isn't eating anymore. Like at lunch with a friend, she just pushes the food around the plate because she's too busy thinking about Will. She's got these outbursts of anger at her mum that she says it's because she thinks he's got a secret boyfriend, but still. Yeah, there's this withdrawal from everyone around them. She's not really paying proper attention to her friend. Like, yeah, all of this. See what I mean? This book is very literally romanticizing the grooming and abuse of children and packaging it up as though it's something aspirational, which is not okay. If you'd like to find out a little bit more and find a list of like resources and places where you can get help and stuff like that for issues relating to child abuse and child sexual assault, then I will leave a bunch of links down in the video description, just in case you want to, you know, just in case anyone needs them. Laken has another tantrum. Again. I marched to my room and slammed the door. Again. Who knows how many doors I've slammed since we moved here. I'm constantly leaving or entering rooms pissed off at someone. Will slams poems, I slam doors. I hate that line, but yeah. Laken goes to bed and struggles to sleep. See what I mean? So she wakes up late for school the next day. That night is her friend's date with Nick, Gavin and Eddie. They eat pizza together and then they go to the poetry slam poetry event, Words is Hard. And that's where Eddie and the guys start gossiping about Will and his ex. And I was like, how the hell do these kids know so much about their teacher's personal life? It is so inappropriate. But it turns out that it's because he went to school with them. Because there's only these 3-4 years between them. Apparently they were freshmen when he was in his final year, so they had like 1 year of school together and now he's their teacher. This is why like a lot of the time you're not allowed to go back and do like student teaching at your own school. At least not in the UK anyway. It's just very inappropriate. Anyway, they start gossiping about him and his ex, whose name is Vaughn. Man, Vaughn really did a number on him, Nick says. His ex, Eddie, says. They dated their last 2 years of high school. They were the couple. Homecoming queen, football star. We were freshmen when he was a senior. He was a nice guy, I guess. Can't say the same about Vaughn, Gavin says. Why, was she a bitch, I ask? Honestly, she wasn't that bad in high school. It's what she did to him after they graduated. After his parents. Eddie's voice trails off. What did she do? I sound too interested. I know. She dumped him 2 weeks after his parents were killed in a car wreck. He had a football scholarship but lost it when he had to move back home to take care of his little brother. Vaughn told everyone she wasn't marrying a college dropout with a kid, so that's it. He lost his parents, his girlfriend, his scholarship, became a guardian, all in the same 2-week time frame. Again with a sad backstory. And of course the ex is just an awful, awful person because people can't just have amicable breakups in Colleen Hoover's world, right? And we just need to know that Laken is better in every way. But you know, honestly, I don't blame this girl. She's 18, and all of a sudden, your partner is now, like, his whole life has changed. He's living in an entirely different place to where you and him planned. His career has changed, his future has changed. Now he's got a kid to look after. I understand an 18-year-old girl not wanting to take that on. That doesn't make her a bitch. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe not 2 weeks after his parents died, but I don't think it's unreasonable that she didn't want that and broke up with him. Just saying. Colleen Hoover really demonizes anyone who doesn't want a baby or child. Completely. Anyway, they get to the club and Eddie decides that now is the time to give Laken a makeover in the loos for some reason. I don't know why. She turns me to the mirror and my jaw drops to the floor. I can't believe it. I look pretty?
I look quite pretty.
My bangs are pulled into a French braid that hangs loose down my shoulder. The soft amber hue of eyeshadow brings out my eyes. My lips are defined but not too colourful. I look just like my mother. Shocking, wild, the hot girl is pretty. Who'd have thunk it? Eddie gets up to perform a poem called Pink Balloon. Colleen really likes giving these poems with like the title colour, noun, you know? Blue sweater, pink balloon. I'm surprised we didn't get a purple hair clip in this book. Eddie's poem is just tragic backstory exposition, just like Will's was. My name is Olivia King. I'm 5 years old. My mother bought me a balloon. I remember the day she walked through the front door with it. the curly hot pink ribbon trickling down her arm wrapped around her wrist. She was smiling at me as she untied the ribbon and wrapped it around my hand. "Here, Livy, I bought this for you." She called me Livy. I was so happy. I'd never had a balloon before. I mean, I always saw balloons wrapped around other kids' wrists in the parking lot of Walmart, but I never believed I would have my very own pink balloon. I was so excited, so ecstatic, so thrilled. I couldn't believe my mother bought me something. She'd never bought me anything before. I played with it for hours. It was full of helium and it danced and swayed and floated as I drug it around from room to room with me, thinking of places to take it, thinking of places the balloon had never been before. I took it in the bathroom, the closet, the laundry room, the kitchen, the living room. I wanted my new best friend to see everything I saw. I took it to my mother's bedroom. My mother's bedroom? Where I wasn't supposed to be? With my pink balloon? I covered my ears as she screamed at me, wiping the evidence off her nose. She slapped me across the face as she told me how bad I was, how much I misbehaved, how I never listened. She shoved me into the hallway and slammed the door, locking my pink balloon inside with her. I wanted him back. He was my best friend, not hers. The pink ribbon was still tied around my wrist, so I pulled and pulled, trying to get my new best friend away from her. And it popped. My name is Eddie. I'm 17 years old. My birthday is next week. I'll be the big 1-8. My foster dad is buying me these boots I've been wanting. I'm sure my friends will take me out to eat. My boyfriend will buy me a gift, maybe even take me to a movie. I'll even get a nice little card from my foster care worker wishing me a happy 18th birthday, informing me I've aged out of the system. I'll have a good time. I know I will. But there's one thing I know for sure. I better not get any shitty ass pink balloons. I know. Exposition with line breaks, just without as many line breaks this time. Does it bother anyone else that all the poems in this book, even by different poets, all have the same voice and the same style and the same kind of format, you know? Laken, Will, Pregnant Girl, Eddie, Gavin, all have the same poetic voice. It's really annoying. But again, where is the poetry? I want to criticize these and pick them apart and analyze them, but there's so little to say. There's nothing to analyze. Everyone chats again. They go on about how when all the friends were freshmen, Will was a senior, and Gavin pranked him and locked him in his car, and then he had this stupid nickname of Ducky, which doesn't make sense to me. Ducky is never explained as a nickname, and it never comes up again, so I don't get the point in this, other than to maybe show that Will has no boundaries with his students, you know? He just sits there and laughs along with them, and he's like, ha ha ha, those are the days, right friends? Not friends, kids in your care. The next night, Laken is on the way out to hang out with Eddie again, and her mum understandably gets all paranoid about her potentially seeing Will, and Laken acts like she's being crazy, but her mum's not being crazy. She's being a mum. Also, in the scene while nosing around, Laken found a bank statement with a crazy nearly $200,000 in her account. Turns out that her mum also never actually sold the home in Texas, so her mum's been lying about lots, and the family is like ridiculously super rich. And again, I kind of have to ask, you run a hardware store and you're a part-time nurse, how the hell do you have that much money? I mean, okay, turns out apparently a lot of it is dad's life insurance, but come on, a lot of money. Anyway, I guessed at this point. I reckon life insurance pay out for the dad, and she had to move to Texas for some experimental treatment of whatever is making her ill. I don't know, I don't care. She just needs to do more to keep the predator away from her daughter. Tell the school. I was entirely right. Chapter 10. Okay, hi again everyone. I just had to go and take a little break, and by a little break I mean overnight. I went to sleep. I'm not very good at talking to people, so I find the long videos kind of draining to film, and I'm find it easy when I split up and take breaks, so I hope you're okay with that. Let me know down in the comments if you're fine with me kind of doing it in chunks like this. But anyway, chapter 10. I don't want to disrupt your watching too much. Chapter 10. Laken gets home from being out with her friend Eddie, and she finds her mum absolutely like sobbing, and her mum goes, "Lake, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I'm so sorry." She's crying. I back apart, that's a weird way of saying it. I back apart from her and go sit on the couch. There's tissue paper all over both end tables. She's been crying a lot. Good. She should feel bad. Awful even. Dad and I were going to tell you before. Dad? You were seeing him before Dad even died? I stand up and pace the floor. Mum, how long has this been going on? I'm yelling now and crying again. I look at her, waiting for her to defend her repulsive behaviour, but she's staring at the table in front of her. She leans forward and cocks her head at me. Seeing who? What do you think is going on? At this point I was like, ha! Told you she wasn't seeing anyone. Laken's being a little bitch. This is the I'm dying Laken conversation, I bet you. I literally wrote in my script, if this isn't the Lake I'm dying conversation, then I will give up chocolate for a whole month, and let me tell you, I am buying chocolate in bulk. I was so right. The note, it's just something your dad wrote. He was being silly. He drew on my face one night and left a note on the pillow. On my pillow, I kept it. I loved your dad, Lake. I miss him so much. I would never do anything like that to him. There's no one else. Told you so, and I told you the stupid poem was her dad. And the thing is, Lake never, apologizes or feels guilty about, being like, oh my god, this poem is the worst thing I've ever read. But I mean, let's be honest, that's the least of her problems. Now, why do we have to move here, Mum? Why did you make us move here? She takes a deep breath and grabs my hand. The look in her eyes makes my heart sink. It's the same look she had in the hallway earlier this year when she came to tell me the news about my dad. She takes another deep breath and squeezes my hand. Lake, I have cancer. Knew it! See? Colleen Hoover, you are so predictable! I mean, okay, I didn't predict the cancer, but I knew it was a dying thing. To be honest, I should have predicted cancer. If you're going to kill anyone off in a book like this with a long-term illness, cancer is the laziest way to do it, isn't it? Colleen Hoover really cannot resist killing off a decent parent. And I think it angers me even more than normal in this book, because this mother really needs to be around to protect her daughter from this groomer, and now she's not gonna be, and it's just a... Damn you, Colleen. Damn you. I was also so happy that I got the prediction right that in my script I wrote, I shouldn't be so happy about lung cancer, but here we are. Context matters, remember? So her mum tells her that she's dying, and Laken's first reaction, instead of comforting her mum, hugging her mum, being with her mum, talking to her mum, is to run straight across the street sobbing to Will, her groomer. Her mum comes across the street and Will is like, let her stay, Julia, she needs me right now. No, she doesn't. The last person she needs is a predator around her when she is in such a vulnerable state. Stop it. He then uses this as an excuse. He then uses her being all upset and crying as an excuse to literally crawl into bed with her and cuddle like the predator that he is. You know, a lot of groomers often target vulnerable people who are having family troubles, trauma, that sort of thing. They become their confidant, they become someone they rely on for emotional support. Just saying. Chapter 11, and Laken stayed the night with her groomer. They didn't have sex or anything, they just cuddled in the bed. If I was her mother, dying or not, I would have called the police. I think that would have been a very satisfying ending to the book. The police breaking down the door and finding this teacher in bed with this student. I'd have loved it. I'd have applauded at that. Will says, I'm taking Kel and Calder to a matinee, he says as he turns on the dishwasher. We're leaving in a few minutes. I'll probably take them to dinner afterwards, so we'll be back around 6. Should give you and your mum time to talk. I don't like how he throws that last sentence in there like I'm susceptible to his manipulation. Trust me, love, you are, but that's not how he's manipulating you. Eddie turns up and Laken goes out and she's all like, yoo-hoo, I'm in Will's house. Come over here to our teacher's house where I've been staying the night. On the one hand, she's an idiot. On the other, if this was in the real world, at least she would be giving everyone tons of evidence to actually put him in prison. Laken tells Eddie everything that's gone on between her and Will, and Eddie's response is just like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Is he a good kisser? When really she should be like, oh my god, I can't believe it, I'm calling the police. But again, Eddie's a kid as well, we can't blame her. Chapter 12, and Eddie makes Laken talk to her mum. Basically, turns out the mum had cancer for a while before the dad died. They found a doctor to help, decided to move to Michigan together to get this treatment, just like I predicted. Then the dad had a heart attack, and the poor mum, bless her, she blames herself for the dad having the heart attack out of nowhere, being like, it's my fault, my illness put so much stress on him, and yeah, I feel quite bad for her, poor woman. But also, yeah, protect your daughter. Turns out cancer has spread a ton more, and yeah, the mum is absolutely dying. Bad. Boo. We hate cancer, obviously. She eventually starts coughing and has to turn away. I watch her as she continues to cough, gasping for breath. She's so sick. How did I not notice? Her cheeks were even shallower than before. Her hair is thinner. I hardly recognise her. I've been so focused on my own misery that I haven't even noticed my own mother being swept away right before my eyes. Well, at least she realises how self-obsessed and self-absorbed she is for once. I mean, it doesn't last long, but it's a nice moment. I'm also just going to turn the light on. It's getting quite dark in here today. It is a very cloudy, rainy day here. So the mum is all like, so after I'm gone, my friend Brenda is going to be Kel's guardian. And instead of being like, oh, amazing, I will support this great, kind adult, Laken literally starts screaming at her and having another tantrum. I stand up and grip the back of the chair and throw it to the floor with such a force that the seat comes loose from the base. She flinches as I sprint towards her, pointing my finger in her chest. She is not getting Kel. You are not giving my brother. I scream so loud my throat burns. Does this really sound like someone who is capable of raising a child? No. No, it does not. Laken then literally threatens her mother, saying that if she tells Kel about the cancer and that she's dying, Laken will never see or talk to her again. You're threatening to never see your dying mother again? I know she's a victim of a groomer, that's separate, we're not going to blame her for that, but all that aside, Laken is a horrible, horrible person. Laken then has another tantrum. She's like back in Will's house, and Laken has another tantrum in his bed. When she gets over that tantrum, she decides to have a small breakdown and rearrange his entire house. Now, if someone decided to rearrange my entire house, I would cry. Don't do that. It's rude. Will is very upset, and just as I would be, but I don't agree with how he deals with those feelings. Will responds with violence. He takes his abuse to the next level. He glides across the living room and bends down, snatching up the recipe cards I've organised into piles. He finally throws them back on the floor and grabs my wrists and tries to pull me up, but I start kicking at his legs. Let go, I'm not done. Let go. He lets go of my hands and I fall back to the floor. What the hell, I scream. I'm suddenly drenched in water. I look up and Will is standing over me with an empty pitcher in his hand. I lunge forward and start punching at his legs. He backs away as I start hitting him, trying to get off the floor. Why the hell did he just do that? I'm gonna punch him in the face. I stand up and try to hit him, but he steps aside and grabs my arm and wraps it around my back. I'm flailing my other arm at him as he pushes me towards the hallway into the bathroom. The next thing I know, his arms are around me and he lifts me up, pulls the shower curtain back and shoves me in. I'm still trying to punch him, but his arms are longer than mine. He holds me against the wall with one arm while he turns the faucet on with the other. A stream of ice-cold water splashes my face. I gasp. Jerk, jackass, asshole. He continues to hold me back as he turns the other faucet on and the water turns warmer. Take a shower, Laken. Take a damn shower. He lets go of me and slams the bathroom door. I jump out the shower, my clothes are drenched. I try to open the bathroom door, but I can't because he's holding the doorknob from the other side. Let me out, Will, now. I'm beating the door and trying to turn the doorknob, but it doesn't budge. Laken? He calmly responds from the other side of the door. I'm not letting you out of the bathroom until you take off your clothes, get in the shower, wash your hair, and calm down. I'm sorry, but what the hell did I just read? This is toxic as hell. So, I just want to kind of make it clear at this point that there is such a thing as reactive abuse, which is a little bit of a misnomer because I'm not sure if we could really call it... It's hard to say if it's actually abuse or not, but basically, by definition, it's when someone who has been abused begins to defend themselves by responding to abuse with physical or verbal attacks. And that's what I feel Laken was doing here when she started kicking him and hitting him. Obviously, what she did is not okay, the kicking and hitting back. Not fine, we're not going to excuse it, but it is explainable, you know? He was grooming her, sexually abusing her, and then got physically violent with her. I understand why it happened, and she's not entirely at fault here. She wasn't entirely responsible for her actions, so it's complicated. So, you know, he's been pulling her around, pushing her around, dragging her by her wrists, throwing water over her, and then he literally forces her into a shower and locks her in a room. I'm sorry, but no matter how you look at it, this is abuse. There is no other word for it. This man is abusing a vulnerable child in his care. I really feel like, and this is me talking from a very personal place here, but I feel like with this book in particular, Colleen Hoover has taken some of the most traumatic and damaging things that have happened in my life and sold them as romance in a book. And I feel very sick speaking about it, reading it. It bothers me a lot. You know, back in like 2017 or something when I started YouTube, I didn't really understand trigger warnings, and I thought they were a bit silly. I thought it was just like people being like, oh, you know, this book contains dogs, so if you don't like dogs, don't watch it, or don't read it. Just words, what am I saying? And I thought they were kind of like overused. And then as I got older and realised, I was like, oh no, wait a second, like there are good reasons for using them. It's not like, you know, what I've seen on Tumblr or whatever. It's like when people do trigger warnings for things like, or content warnings for like, you know, talking about sexual abuse or, you're right, cool. I'll be there in a second, baby. I'm just talking about something serious. Give me 2 minutes. I love you. Sorry, Kara's getting grumbly. Okay, where was I? Sorry. Yeah, I think I saw a really great way of putting it in. Kieran sent me a video yesterday about kind of role-playing games and stuff like that, and it was... Let me find what the video was called. Okay, it was a video about dementia, so it's called The Murder Game Revolution That Gripped China, and it's by People Make Games, and great video, really, really enjoyed it, and I seriously want to try out some of those games. But in it, he said this great line about, which really sums up what I've kind of like learned over the last 6-7 years, about how trigger warnings and content warnings aren't for the majority, but they are for the minority who need it. For most people, yeah, sure, we can ignore content warnings and stuff, and so it doesn't necessarily make a difference to us whether they're there or not. But then for the people who need them, if they're there, it helps, and if it doesn't, it causes a lot of damage. I don't know if I'm making any sense here. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I thoroughly understand the importance of them now, and I feel like this book absolutely needed a few of them, because blindly going into a story that is packaged as romance and love and aspirational and beautiful, and this is such a sexy, wonderful thing, and the things that are being labelled as that are domestic violence and grooming from a teacher, it's pretty triggering. Like, I struggled reviewing this. I really did. It's hard. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, that was a completely unscripted ramble. It probably made no sense. I'm sorry. Okay, where were we? Right. So Lakin finally gets out of the shower and she's like, Will was right, I didn't need that. And he's like, I'm sorry, Lake. I'm sorry I did that. You were just losing it. Which, funnily enough, is something my abuser also did to me when I was in a quite abusive relationship a couple of years back, and he was aggressive and violent, and it was... Not going to go into details now, but this is something he used to do to me. He'd tell me things like, I only did this bad thing because you made me do it. I'm sorry you made me do this. I'm sorry you made me hurt you. If you were a better girlfriend, I wouldn't have had to cheat or get violent or angry or throw this or hurt you or blah, blah. Like, it was always made... They always make their bad behaviour out to be our fault, and it's sick. And that's exactly what's happening here, except it's not recognised as abusive here, which is the problem. They fall asleep together for a while, and then Eddie pops back round to check on Lakin, and as she's leaving, Will wakes up. I turn back around and see Will sitting up in the floor. He's looking at me like he's about to give me detention. What the hell was she doing here? He can really be intimidating when he wants to be. Yeah, abusers generally are intimidating, especially when they hold a position of power over you. And I'm sorry, but this line here about, like, he looks like he's about to give me detention, this to me just really highlights that power imbalance and the fact this is a student and a teacher, not a girl and a boy. Will gets mad at her and sends her home because he doesn't care about her problems when she's putting him and his life at risk. It's typical with abusers. They'll be nice to you when they're getting something out of it, and then when it's inconvenient for them, screw you. Everything needs to be on their terms. Will is a typical abuser. The next day at school, Lakin and Eddie get detention from Will because he needs to talk to them after school. So he's literally abusing his position of power over these two vulnerable students so he can try and protect himself and get away with the literal crimes he's committed. He's like, oh no, I'm worried these girls, these students in my care, are going to tell people about the crimes I've committed, so I'm going to abuse my power and give them detention because that's what I can do as a teacher, just so I can essentially threaten them into silence. That is a major, major abuse of power. Eddie treats the whole thing like a joke, but personally I don't find child predators funny. Just throwing that out there. Outside detention, Eddie asks, the more I think about it, this really sucks. Why couldn't he just call me or something if he wanted to talk about what I know? I had plans today. Because he needed to ensure you'd be there, so he abused his power to do it. That's what abusers do. He needs to be in control, and he will abuse the power he has to get that. Eddie keeps making jokes throughout the detention, and Will doesn't laugh, he doesn't even smile. He sits in his seat and glares at us while we giggle like high school girls. Well, you are high school girls, and he's an adult. Oh, careful, Angel. This scene actually reminded me a lot of those scenes in Lolita where Dolores acts like the 12-year-old girl that she is, and Humbert gets mad at her for being so immature, you know? Does anyone else get the impression that Colleen Hoover is the type to completely misread Lolita and also see it as like a beautiful romance novel instead of what it is, which is, you know, a tale of abuse and grooming from a very, very sick man? Okay, I got you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love you, I'm glad you're here. Will emotionally blackmails Eddie into staying silent. Hello. Hello. I know. You're exactly what I need right now. I love you. He looks up at her. It is a big deal, Eddie. That's what I'm trying to tell you both. If you don't treat this as a big deal, you'll get careless. Something might slip. I've got too much at stake. Yeah, honestly, I don't care. You should have thought about this before you abused a child. Simple as that. When Eddie keeps making jokes, Will then gets angry and violent again. He's really, really showing this side of him, and it's terrifying. Will reaches his limit. He slams his fist against the desk as he stands up. Neither Eddie nor I are laughing at this point. I look at her wide eyes and shake my head, letting her know that Chuck Norris needs to retreat, because they're making stupid Chuck Norris jokes. It's ridiculous. This isn't a joke, he says. This is a big deal. He reaches over and takes something out of his drawer and swiftly walks to where we're sitting in the back of the room. He smacks a picture down on the crack where the edges of our desks meet and flips it over. It's a picture of Calder. He points his finger to the picture as he says, this boy is a big deal. Again, I'm sorry, but you should have thought about that before you committed a crime, you know? It's not up to your victims to protect you and your dependents. There's more emotional blackmail as he's like, Calder, little brother. He was there when our parents died. He saw them die. He needs me, so please don't tell anyone I'm a nunce. I may have paraphrased that last bit. Eddie falls for his absolute crap, and we move on to chapter 14. Laken tells us that she's never had sex before, so we know she's going to sleep with Will very soon, and it'll be beautiful, by which I mean disgusting, because he's a predator. Surprisingly enough, this doesn't actually happen in the book, thank God. We don't get a sex scene between them, so small mercies. Everyone carves pumpkins together. Laken, Will, the kids, the mum. Laken refuses to talk about her mum's cancer. End of chapter. I don't get why her mum is playing happy families with a groomer. It really bothers me. Thank you. In chapter 15, Will decides to teach the class about the Abbott brothers. And you know how all of Colleen Hoover's books have a gimmick? The one in this one are not only the poems, but the repeated Abbott brothers lyrics that are like at the beginning and end of that are at the beginning of every chapter. They're kind of boring, so I've not been covering them because what's the point? But yeah, all of her books have a gimmick. So like It Ends With Us had the letters to Ellen DeGeneres. In Verity, it was the manuscript. In Maybe Sunday, it's the texting with the deaf guy. In November 9, there's a manuscript too. And also a huge thank you to Elise for reminding me about half of those, because she's amazing. Go give her a follow. She covers a lot of Colleen Hoover books. So yeah, the one in this one is the Abbott Brothers lyrics. It doesn't really add anything. I thought I'd mention it. Colleen Hoover cannot write a book without a gimmick. It's quite annoying. Then, moving on from all his Abbott Brothers talk, Will is like, let me explain poetry to you by analysing one of my own poems. And then he quotes his poem again, the people don't want to talk about death because it makes them sad line. Like, this puts him on a par with, like, Shakespeare or Rossetti or the greats like that. Come on, you're an idiot. Apparently, though, he is using this as an excuse to kind of, like, send a message to Laken through the class about, like, see, you need to talk about death even though it makes you sad. About, like, her mum dying and stuff, or whatever. Okay. He keeps going through, like, analysing his poem line by line as if there's anything in there really to analyse. It's, oh my god, it's pathetic. He talks about the line about his parents, you know, if only they prepared for their death, by saying, if only they would have prepared, accepted the inevitable, laid out their plans. That's the line. What about this one? My parents weren't prepared to die. I was angry at them for this. I was left with bills, debt, and a child. But what if they would have had warning, a chance to discuss it, lay out their plans? If talking about death wasn't so easy to avoid when they were alive, then maybe I wouldn't have had such a hard time dealing with it after they died. He really thinks this is like a revolutionary thought, doesn't he? Colleen Hoover really thinks she did something with this poem. Oh my god, I can't. But like, also, can we just kind of talk about the in-universe stuff here, because he's mad at his parents because they died in a freak car accident and they didn't prepare better for their deaths. Like, I don't blame them. It's not like they knew what they were dying and just refused to talk about it. It was a freak accident. They weren't expecting it. Oh no, it's not their fault. I get it, Will. I finally whisper. I get it. In the first line, when you said death was the only inevitable thing in life, you emphasized the word death. But when you said it again at the end of the poem, you didn't emphasize the word death. You emphasized the word life. You put the emphasis on life at the end. I get it, Will. You're right. She's not trying to prepare us for her death. She's trying to prepare us for her life. What she has left of it. Oh my god, it's so deep I'm drowning. Save me, Q. Save me. Save me. Save me, QB1 Canooby. You're my only hope. Chapter 16 is just a lot of talking. Laken and her mum finally tell the brother Kel, whose name I still can't take seriously, that the mum has cancer, and the mum finally decides, fine, Laken, you can look after him, and Laken's like, cool, after mum dies, we're staying here. This is our home now. Also, I realise at this point my screen is like 90% Kubi Bum, so enjoy. You happy there? Are you tall? Are you tall? This girl. Laken is like, right, we need to invite Will over right now because he has to help us with childcare for Kel so I can take you to your treatments. Like her mum hasn't already been going to treatments for the last however many months. And they've had the mum's friend Brenda to help out before. Just use Brenda. You don't need the groomer. Stop it. Isn't that right? I know. Over dinner, the kids are like, when she dies, I'm gonna live with Laken, just like you live with Will. It's like we'll be the same. All our parents will be dead and we'll live with our brother and sister. Cool. That's crazy, Calder says. This is a real line in the book. Oh, for God's sake. Laken says a bunch of nonsense like, it really feels like we finally transitioned when it comes to her and Will. There are definitely still moments, but none we're not able to overcome. It's only October and he'll be my teacher until June. That's still 8 long months. When I look at the shift my life has made in the last 8 months, I can't fathom what my life will be in 8 months from now. When I lie down and close my eyes, I make a resolution. Will is not going to be my first priority anymore. I'm putting my mother first, Kel second, and life third. Finally, he no longer has a hold on me. I do not believe this for a second, but I do wish it was true. The next night, Thursday, is Eddie's birthday. Gavin is like, everyone turn up with pink balloons because of her poem. It's this big thing. Her foster dad being like, I want to be forever dad. It's very sweet. I like it. It's nice. I kind of wish there was more of this Eddie and her foster dad relationship in this book instead of Laken and Mr. Groomer, but, you know, what can you do? Afterwards, they all go to Club 9 and Laken gets there a bit early before everyone else, but when she does, Will, who wasn't expecting her to be there, is up on the stage performing a poem that is clearly about her. Once again, it's a poem where every stanza is the same with just one small part changed. It's the only type of poem, apparently, that Colleen Hoover knows how to write. So it's the only poem type that Will, Pregnant Girl, Gavin and Eddie all write. All these poems are the same. It's very annoying. I used to love the ocean, everything about her. Her coral reefs, her white caps, her roaring waves, the rocks they lap, her pirate legends and mermaid tales, treasures lost and treasures held, and all of her fish in the sea. Yes, I used to love the ocean, everything about her, the way she would sing me to sleep as I lay in my bed, then wake me with a force that I soon came to dread, her fables, her lies, her misleading eyes. I'd drain her dry if I cared enough to. I used to love the ocean, everything about her, her coral reefs, her white caps, her roaring waves, the rocks they lap, her pirate legends and mermaid tales, treasures lost and treasures held, and all of her fish in the sea. Well, if you've ever tried navigating your sailboat through her stormy seas, you'll realise that her white caps are your enemies. If you've ever tried swimming ashore when your legs get a cramp, and you just had a huge meal of In-N-Out burgers that's weighing you down, and her roaring waves are knocking the wind out of you, filling your lungs with water as you flail your arms, trying to get someone's attention, but your friends just wave back at you. And if you've ever grown up with dreams in your head about life, and how one of these days you would pirate your own ship and have your own cute crew, and that all the mermaids would love only you, well, you would realise, like I eventually realised, that all good things about her, all the beautiful, it's not real, it's fake. So keep your ocean, I'll take the lake. And then she's like, oh my god, lake, that's my nickname. This must be about me. Oh my god, this means he loves me because he wants to take me. Once again, it's a poor poem. Stop it. If a person wrote this about me, it would not get me into bed. Let's be honest. Did that just really happen? Does he know I'm even here? No, he doesn't. I told him I wasn't coming. He didn't, there you go, gorgeous. He didn't intend for me to hear. Even so, he wrote it. He said himself that he writes what he's feeling. Oh my god, he loves me. Will Cooper is in love with me. No, Will Cooper is a nonce. Get it right. Laken tries to run out of the club, but she leaves her bag behind, and Javi is like, I'm not leaving you alone out here, and it's all this convoluted mess, so he can kind of get her alone, but she's waiting in the parking lot for her bag, and blah blah blah, just so he can try and kiss her. And then we get another assault scene, this time from Javi. I was about to ask him something about snow tires or plows, but it slips my mind as soon as his hands grasp my face and his tongue makes its way into my mouth. I turn my face and push against his chest with my hands. When he feels my resistance, his face backs away from mine, but his body is still pressed against me, pushing me against the cold metal of his truck. What, he smiles. I thought you wanted me to kiss you. No, Javi. I'm still pushing against him with my hands, but he doesn't budge. Come on, he says with a smug grin on his face. You didn't leave your keys inside. You want this. His mouth encircles mine again. His pulse starts to race against my chest. It's not the same reaction I get when Will makes my pulse race. This time it's more like fight or flight mode. I try to scream at him, but his hands are pulling my face into his so hard that I can't catch a breath. I try to move, but he's using his body to pin me against his truck, making it virtually impossible for me to break free. I close my eyes, think Laken think. Just as I'm about to bite down on his lip, Javi pulls away from me, but he keeps going backwards. Someone is dragging him away from me. He falls to the ground and Will straddles him, grabs hold of his shirt and sends a blow straight to Javi's jaw. Javi falls back to the ground, but turns over and pushes off against it, causing Will to stumble back. Stop, I scream. Will is knocked to the ground when Javi returns a punch. I'm afraid Javi is going to hit him again, so I throw myself between them, just as Javi swings a punch intended for Will straight into my back. I fall forward and land on Will. I try to catch my breath, but I have none. I can't inhale. Lake, says Will as he rolls me onto the ground next to him. His worry is fleeting, however, as rage fills his eyes. He grabs the door handle of the car next to us, starts to pull himself up. I didn't mean to hit you, Javi says as he walks towards me. Like, how many assaults does Colleen Hoover really need to put in a book? Seriously. Will continues to beat Javi up for a little while, just for funsies and because he's jealous. It's not a good look, is it? Dragging him off her when he's assaulting her? Understandable. Beating up one of your students in a jealous rage? Nah, mate. Will insists on driving Laken home, but has to stop to have another little violent outburst for a while. Will jerks the car to one side of the road and throws it in park. He punches the steering wheel before he gets out of the car and slams the door. His figure is illuminated by headlights of the car as he walks away from the vehicle, sporadically kicking at the ground and cursing obscenities. He finally stops, and I watch as he stands loosely with his hands on his hips. His head is leaned back, and he's looking at the sky, letting the snow fall on his face. He stands there for a while until he makes his way back to the car, sits down, and calmly shuts the door. He puts the car into gear, and we continue to drive in a silence. I lie awake for hours after that, dissecting the situation. We weren't on school grounds. He was defending me. Maybe Javi won't say anything. Will did throw the first punch, though, and the third, and the fourth, and probably would have thrown the fifth if Gavin wouldn't have walked up when he did. I try to recall every small detail of the entire night, just in case I'm asked to defend his actions tomorrow. I remember what I said earlier about victims having to defend their groomers and abusers and thinking they're doing the right thing because they don't want to get them in trouble. So the next day, Laken is called into the principal's office, and this is beside the point, but we just need to talk about this because Colleen Hoover has not only made one of her only non-white characters a sexual assaulter, but his name, specifically his surname, is Javier Chorizo. She really called him Javier Chorizo. I could not breathe when I read this. I was like, how dense can you be? What are you doing, Colleen Hoover? Are you this, like, non-consciously racist? Is this, like... Oh, I could not. Anyway. God's sake, what is she like? There's also what I assume is a typo here, as the principal refers to Laken as Mrs. Cohen. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. I don't think she was married to her dad. Anyway, Laken tells them what happened, and then Mr. Chorizo God's sake, Mr. Chorizo, whose name I still cannot believe is real, is like, I'm so sorry for my son's behaviour. And then she skips the rest of the school day and goes home, and she finds Will already at his house, and he's like, I resigned. They withdrew my contact. I wasn't fired. We all just thought it would be best if I finished my student teaching in a different school away from Javier. I'm going to meet him with my faculty advisor in half an hour. That's where I'm headed. I would say this is partially a good thing, but ideally I would like Will to stay away from all children in general, not just one particular one, you know? He got off so lightly here. He really did. He beat up a child in a jealous rage because he was worried this child was into his child girlfriend, you know? Ridiculous. Chapter 18, and Kel, the brother, is like, I want to dress as a cancerous lung for Halloween, and the mum's like, okay, I'll make that. What the hell is wrong with Colleen Hoover? Will comes over, and then it's all just like, oh, we're all one big happy family now, blah, 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 blah. I hate it. Will says of his job and punishment, I got a slap on the wrist, he says as we walk inside. They told me since I was defending another student, they really couldn't hold it against me. Boo! Where is the justice? Boo! Will then admits to Laken that he didn't beat Javier up trying to defend her. He beat him up in a jealous rage. He didn't even realise it was an assault. He just saw someone kissing Laken and just had to beat them up. This is insane. This is unhinged. But somehow all Laken takes away from this is, oh my god, see, he really does love me. He says, God, Lake, I can't tell you how pissed I was. I wanted to hurt him so bad. And now that I know he was really hurting you, I want to kill him. He turns away from me and rests his back against the doorframe. Ew. Once again, he traps her in a room, and she's like, ooh, lovely, I like abuse. He turns and faces me, placing both hands on either side of the doorframe. His height and the way he has me blocked in are intimidating, but in a very good way. I'm sorry, but can we stop this? This does such a massive disservice to all of us who have been abused by men and who have been trapped in rooms like this by men fearing for our lives. It's so disrespectful to us. And then Will's all like, oh, well, my job isn't a risk anymore, let's kiss some more. And then he's like, oh, no, wait, sorry, I just had a weak moment. And then pushes her off again, and he messes around so much. Ridiculous. Laken has another tantrum and storms out. Chapter 19. It is Halloween. Kel is dressed as his cancerous lung, and so is his friend Calder. Will calls Lake into the school, and he's all cryptic, like, something happened at the elementary school. I don't know what, but I'm over in Detroit for a job interview. You need to go pick them up now. So it's up to this 18-year-old to skip school herself to go and be a parent to these two kids. Ridiculous. Basically, the teacher's like, they're causing a distraction among the students. Those are very offensive and crude costumes. I don't know who thought it was a good idea, but you need to take them home and change their clothes. And I do think the teacher here really does have a point. I get that this might be Kel's way of dealing with grief and his mum's illness and everything like that, but they aren't the only family to have ever had someone suffer from lung cancer and die from lung cancer. So I feel like while it might be helping them too, it could be very insensitive to other kids in the class who won't find their costumes cathartic and in fact do find it offensive and distressing. So I'm actually with the teacher on this one, you know? Do what you need to grieve, but never at the detriment of others. If other kids are upset by this, yeah, I'm sorry, but you need to change. Laken's just like, oh, but our mum's dying of cancer, so you have to let them get away with it. We don't care about anyone else. Blah, blah. And then the teacher just caves in, and weirdly the kids win the costume contest and get some money. I don't know, probably out of pity or guilt or something, but it's a horrible conclusion. I hate it. Chapter 20. We are nearly done, I promise. We're nearly done. We got this. Laken keeps avoiding Will, thank God. And her mum is hoarding more money than most of us will ever see in a lifetime, seriously. And the mum's like, Laken, never use a credit card, they'll haunt you. Which actually seems like terrible advice. You should say to your kids, use a credit card responsibly. Don't get into debt, absolutely, debt is a bad thing, but using a credit card that you pay off in full every month is a really good way to build a credit score. And having a good credit score is important. So either Colleen Hoover is financially illiterate, or actually, no, that's all I've got. For some reason, though, now the mum is like, well, since I'm dying, Laken, you should come to Will's graduation with us. And she's totally okay with this groomer having once abused her daughter. And she's all like, you're both making the wrong choice. You need to be together. You're so perfect together. It's disgusting. Stop it. Stop legitimizing abuse. And the mum's like, what if I'm not wrong, Lake? Question everything. What if he wants to choose you? You'll never know if you don't Tell him how you feel. You've completely shut him out. You haven't given him the chance to pick you. Do not let a groomer pick you. Stop it. The mum's like, go to the club. Tell him how you feel. And I'm like, go to the police. Tell them what happened. But annoyingly, Laken can only hear one of us, so she follows her mum's advice and goes to the club. Chapter 21, and Laken gets to the club and is like, screw the other performers. I'm storming the stage. So she does, and in one of the most sickening moments of this incredibly sick book, she decides to declare her love for Will via a poem called, excuse me, I just puke. Schooled. It's called Schooled. You're writing about a teacher grooming you, and this being true love in a poem called Schooled. Does Colleen Hoover not see how sick this is? I got schooled this year. By everyone. By my little brother, by the Abbott brothers, by my mother, my best friend, my teacher, my father, and by a boy. A boy that I'm seriously, deeply, madly, incredibly, and undeniably in love with. Side note, can we not call him a boy, please? He's a grown man who should have known better. I got so schooled this year. By a 9-year-old. He taught me that it's okay to live a life a little backwards. And how to laugh at what you think is unlaughable. I got schooled this year by a band. They taught me how to find that feeling of feeling again. They taught me how to decide what to be and go be it. I got schooled this year by a cancer patient. She taught me so much. She's still teaching me so much. She taught me to question, to never regret. She taught me to push my boundaries because that's what they're there for. She taught me to find a balance between head and heart, and then she taught me how. I got schooled this year by a foster kid. She taught me to respect the hand I was dealt and to be grateful that I was ever dealt a hand. She taught me that family doesn't have to be blood, sometimes your family are your friends. I got schooled this year by a teacher. He taught me that the points are not the point is poetry. I got schooled this year by my father. He taught me that heroes aren't always invincible and that the magic is within me. I got schooled this year by a boy who's also your teacher. A boy that I'm seriously, deeply, madly, incredibly, and undeniably in love with, and he taught me that most of all, to put the emphasis on life. I really thought nothing could make me hate poetry, but Colleen Hoover is coming so close. It's quite an achievement, isn't it, Koo? It's quite an achievement. I know. I'm sorry, but there's more to poetry than just saying your feelings with line breaks. Stop it. Turns out that Will is one of the judges, and he's like, oh my god, screw this event that everyone worked so hard for, to organise and paid to be a part of, and blah blah blah. I'm gonna storm the stage and perform a poem too. And he runs on stage and performs a poem called Better Than Third, you know, like in reference to his priorities in life and blah blah blah. And you do know that people can just privately talk to each other, right? Not everything has to be said with a crowd, especially when you're publicly admitting to grooming a student. If you want to not go to jail, that's probably best done in private. Anyway, his terrible poem is, I met a girl in a U-Haul, a beautiful girl, and I fell for her. I fell hard. Unfortunately, sometimes life gets in the way. Life definitely got in my way. It got all up in my damn way. Life blocked the door with a stack of wooden 2x4s nailed together and attached to a 15-inch concrete wall behind a row of solid steel bars bolted to a titanium frame that no matter how hard I shoved it against, it wouldn't budge. Sometimes life doesn't budge. It gets all up in your damn way. It blocked my plans, my dreams, my desires, my wishes, my wants, my needs. It blocked out that beautiful girl that I fell so hard for. Life tries to tell you what's best for you, what should be most important to you, what should come in first, second, or third. I tried so hard to keep it all organised, alphabetised, stacked in chronological order, everything in its perfect space, its perfect place. That's what I thought life wanted me to do. That's what life needed me to do, right? Keep it all in sequence. Sometimes life gets in your way, it gets all up in your damn way. But it doesn't get all up in your damn way because it wants you to just give up and let it take control. Life doesn't get all up in your damn way because it just wants you to hand it all over and be carried along. Life wants you to fight it, learn how to make it your own. It wants you to grab an axe and hack through the wood. It wants you to get a sledgehammer and break through the concrete. It wants you to grab a torch and burn through the metal and steel until you can reach through and grab it. Life wants you to grab all the organised, the alphabetized, the chronological, the sequenced. It wants you to mix it all together, stir it up, blend it. Life doesn't want you to tell it that your little brother should be the only thing that comes first. Life doesn't want you to tell it that your career and your education should be the only thing that comes in second. And life doesn't want me to just let it tell me that the girl I met, the beautiful, strong, amazing, resilient girl that I fell so hard for, should only come in third. Life knows. Life is trying to tell me that the girl I love, the girl I fell so hard for, there's room for her in first. I'm putting her first. Please shut up. Again, this isn't a poem. Will sets the microphone down and jumps off the stage as he walks up to me. I've gone so long teaching myself how to let him go, to break the hold he has on me. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked a damn bit. He takes my face in his hands and wipes my tears away with his thumbs. I love you, Lake. He smiles as he presses his forehead against mine. You deserve to come first. Everyone and everything in the entire room fades. The only sound I hear is the crash of the walls I build up around me as they crumble to the ground. I love you too. I love you so much, I say. He brings his lips to mine, and I throw my arms around him and kiss him back. Of course I kiss him back. The end. Except it's not really the end, because there's a horrible little epilogue, which I hope involves the police in a very small prison cell, but who am I kidding? It doesn't. Sadly. They just end up having a Christmas together after Laken's mum dies, and her mum left her a letter for Christmas, and that's about it. The end. And that's it. That's the end of the book. The groomer gets his victim. I know. It's hard to say whether I hated this more or less than It Ends With Us. I think probably more. I think this is now my least favourite of all Colleen Hoover books. It had a lot of the abuse of It Ends With Us, but at least in It Ends With Us, some of it was actually labelled as abuse. In this, we get the violence without the label. It's also made worse because of the grooming, the sexual assault, the power imbalance, the literal crimes. Thankfully, this book didn't have any of the terrible sex scenes that Verity or It Ends With Us has, which I'm very, very grateful for. I think the biggest problem I have with this book, though, is that it is aimed at teenagers. This isn't aimed at adults. It doesn't come with content warnings. It's not for an adult audience. This is for teenagers without any disclaimers or content warnings, and it romanticizes grooming and sexual abuse. It romanticizes a relationship with your teacher. It makes people think that this can be true love, that this is okay, and that's not okay. I also just think on a personal level, for all the trauma this particular book brought back up for me and tried to tell me was romance that I should be grateful for, it's also my least favourite for that reason. But sadly, there's 2 more books in this series. I have no idea what happens in them, but if you would like me to review them, then please let me know down in the comments and I will do that. Oh gosh, this was a journey, wasn't it? This was an absolute journey. At least we had a giggle at some of the bad poetry along the way, so, you know, peaks and troughs. Yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you again to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video. Please go check them out using the link and code down in my video description. If you like this video and want to see more, please feel free to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, share the video around online because all of that really helps with engagement and stuff for me. If you would like to support my work at all, I do have a Patreon that you can join, and at the higher tiers you get sent out these cool like exclusive stickers and prints every 3 months, which is fun. I think it's about that time of year where I update the designs on them, so that should be good. Otherwise, you can support my work by buying my poetry book or any of the merch that I design myself. And I think that's pretty much it for all the self-promotion stuff. So my little Kubi's snoring quite loudly in the background. I don't know if you can hear her, but I think she's ready for a little play. But yeah, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you guys a lot, and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye!